Hello dear viewers, support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it, and also make sure you comment your thought. Now let's start the video. For 1,000 years, the Golden Tooth guarded the Westerlands from any eastern invasion. Even as House of Lannister faced rapacious Greyjoy reavers or quarrelsome Reach nobles, the Lords of the Rock never lost sleep over the fractious rivermen. The Tooth was unassailable, just like Casterly Rock. Now, the fortress was a gateway for attack, and the rich lands beyond, rugged hills, rolling plains, fertile farms, and prolific mines were ripe for plunder. After their treachery, the Northern Army consolidated their gains with lightning speed. Gacy Mormont, the woman in Lord Jack's black steel plate, blew a blast from her war horn, and in the valleys below, trumpets and horns answered. Soon North and Rivermen surged into the Tooth, and 1,000 horses milled about the river road. Wagons of prisoners were dragged by hard-bitten warriors to the Tooth. In the castle, the women and children were rounded up in the Great Hall, the master-at-arms and guards forced to surrender and locked in the dungeons, and the maester and castellan interrogated. Armed Northmen searched the castle for gold, food, and anyone in hiding or seeking to escape. A giant white wolf with blood-red eyes joined the patrols, terrifying the already frightened ladies of the castle. Alysio Lifford was stunned at the turn of events, from gossiping over lemon cakes to being guarded by she-bears with wicked morning stars in a span of hours. She sat in a corner of the Great Hall, trying to keep her composure. Her aunts, Miranda Lifford, Stafford Lannister's wife, and Cassella Lifford, Tybolt's mother, shook with fear, which only worsened when Ser Stafford and Tybolt, along with many other highborn prisoners, were dragged before Jon Snow in chains. Alysanne did her best to soothe the younger children and girls clinging to her and cowering from the Northmen. Master Hammond, Castellan Doggett, and Septon Baldric offered no guidance, as they were as paralyzed as the ladies. Alysanne heard what happened to cities and castles sacked in war, looting and pillage, men and children put to the sword. Slavery was outlawed in Westeros, but after battle, women were carried away to be gang-raped, often killed afterwards. As the lady of the castle, she had some protection for her father. Lord Lefford would pay a ransom if she was not despoiled, but her maids and servants had none, and in the heat of the moment, even her title might not save her maidenhead from being treated as plunder, particularly by the war leader. None of that happened at the Golden Tooth. The highborn women and any children were placed under tight guard in the Great Hall. Even maids and female servants were watched by fierce fighters with a black she-bear on their shields. Snow was far more interested in the prisoners, their names, titles, houses, and their parentage rather than loot. The northern soldiers and their commanders had been directed to search for every inch of the castle, but were told that anyone who surrendered would not be harmed. Snow questioned her wailing uncle on the size and composition of the Western forces. 2 days ago, Stafford Lannister bragged to admiring ladies how his men would bring House Stark to heel. Now Stafford betrayed the names of all the highborn squires and knights present at Oxcross. And there were many, many names. Ser Stafford had been tasked to train the new Lannister army at Casterly Rock, and he and his 3 captains were all captured. Sirs Rupert Brax, Lord Antonio Jast, and Sir Limon Vicari. But the North had captured nearly 100 highborn hostages, and half of them young boys who had been pressed into service after the defeats in the Riverlands. Martin Lannister, Sir Cavan's 3rd son, Lord Jast's sons, the heir to House Vicari, Lord Prester's son, the bastard of Riverspring. The Surits, Robb and Morland's nephews, and the Farman boys. There were squires from over 24 noble houses, and to top it off, many lady mothers had come to the safety of the Tooth to say goodbye before their sons went off to war. Now those departures were postponed, perhaps forever. Lord Snow, a giant of a man with dark brown hair and a thick, grisly beard, reported. A giant 2-handed sword was strapped to his back. 4 of the 5 towers are secure, but a lady and her guards have bolted themselves in the bell tower. They have barricaded the doors. Even though you told them the consequences, Snow asked. I said we would show mercy if they surrendered, and if they didn't, that I would return with more men. Another man, tall and rangy with a long axe, interrupted. What if we set the tower on fire? The smoke would force them out. Such a fire would have to be rather large, and if the winds changed, might be dangerous. Which lady is it? And why would anyone want to hide there? Snow said. No one in the hall answered that question or even met the man's eyes. The leader of the northern army looked more impatient than angry. If my men have to break down the door, I will order them to kill everyone inside. Men or women, small folk or highborn. Septon Baldric gasped. The sept is there. It is sacrilege to shed blood in the light of the seven. The fat man thundered. Lucky I follow the old gods then. Lady Lefford, which one of your ladies is missing? The Northman was no fool. Alizian could refuse to answer, but he would find out eventually, and she had no desire to provoke his anger. Lady Lannister. Snow raised his eyebrows. Which one? The Lannisters are a rather fertile house. Your aunt Miranda is married to Stafford. We have his daughters, Serena and Muriel, here. Lady Dorna Lannister, Sir Kevin's wife. Alisanne responded. No doubt she fled for her younger daughter's safety. Janie is less than 3 name days old. She is a fool, then. Her actions only endanger her children. Jon said. Martin Lannister. The boy was dragged to his feet by a Mormont fighter. He was 10 and 1, Willem's twin, although he seemed younger with short blonde hair and no wisps of hair on his chin. At ease, boy. I have your father, Ser Kevin, and your brother, Willem. They have not been mistreated. Smazan, take him to the bell tower. He will convince his mother to open the door and surrender. If she does not, break Martin's arms and legs slowly, so his mother can hear the screams. The giant grinned and then left with the frightened boy and a dozen armed warriors. You heartless blackguard, Alicent said. Snow eyed her curiously. If she cares for Martin, the lady will surrender. Fathers and mothers find it hard to see their children suffer, and they will do much to prevent that. And the bastard was proven right. There were no screams or no sounds of fighting. A chastised Dorna Lannister walked to the great hall, clutching her daughter Janie with one arm and holding Martin's hand. Alysiane consoled the lady and her children, and could see the tears in their eyes. Lady Dorna knelt on the ground and held her hands in quiet prayer. Snow did not notice or care. He was too busy examining the lists of prisoners. The sun was still high in the sky when the commanders met in the castle solar. Jon sat in Lord Lyford's chair, a gaudy seat carved from the golden wood of the Summer Isles, and decorated with panels of Syrian Lannister's victories. The great king of the Rock had extended the rule of Casterly Rock to the tooth by defeating an alliance of 3 petty kings. The Mormont girls stood at the window, with Lady Maechie, Sarah Wendell, and Sarah Stepheron seated opposite Jon. The Freys, Small Jon, and Eddard Karstark were all present, as were Chet and Jerian. Lord Snow, we have found many chests of treasure. Gold and silver coins, ingots, jewels, filigree rings, gold brooches inlaid with garnets, cloths and pins, even bolts of silk. I have asked your boy to make a record, so that none will be stolen or lost, Wendell said. I trust your honesty, Sarah Wendell, but an inventory will help. I will speak to Robb on how to best use the gold. But a share of the spoils will go to those who captured the castle, Jon said. Snow, you were right about the food, but I doubt that was a guess. The Lannisters have stored an enormous amount of supplies at the castle. Sacks of grain, bales of hay, barrels of smoked meats, dried beans, salted fish, and casks of ale. Best of all, there are pens nearby with hundreds of cattle. We can drive that back to River Run. There is enough food here to supply our army for 2 or 3 moons. Lady Mormont said happily. The meat and grain will be more valuable than gold. We must find a way to transport it back. Jon stopped when he heard a loud groan from the oldest person in the room. Sarah Stepheron, what is the matter? Pardon, my lord, I feel ill. Stepheron's face had turned a sickly shade of white. Sir Stepheron took ill after he chastised Black Walder for looting the lord's chamber. Walder claimed 3 satin cushions, an ebony footstool, a lady's mirror, and even Lord Lefford's bed as loot. Perwyn Frey snapped. How does the twit expect to bring back a large bed to the twins? Small Jon asked. Perhaps he will sleep on it as it floats up the trident, Karstark japed. Snow, besides the loot, the food, and the prisoners, there is another urgent matter. What shall we do next? The news of Oxcross will spread like wildfire by tomorrow. Casterly Rock may not know the tooth was taken, but they will no doubt send ravens. In a week's time, the Lannisters will know, Mage said. I say, take the war further west. There are gold and silver mines at Castamere. Let's seize them, Small Jon declared. Even at Last Hearth, the singers knew the reigns of Castamere. Didn't Tywin Lannister flood Castamere? and we are an army, not miners. And Castamere is 200 miles away from the Golden Tooth, Wendell said. So was Oxcross from River Run, and we still crushed them. The Lannister army is overstretched. The castles might hold, but they cannot defend their countryside. Small John said. True, but the 200 miles from River Run was mostly in our lands, and there are many strong castles there. Ashmark the Crag. But Sir Renly makes a good point. If Tywin Lannister has left the mines flooded, then the veins may have run dry, Jon said. Lord Snow, should we retreat from the Tooth? Ser Stevron said, groaning. Retreat? Why should we do that? An outraged Small John said, we should be attacking. Are all Frey knights as cowardly as Lord Walder? Watch your tongue, Number. You have no reason to question our courage. Perwyn retorted. Ser Stevron is thinking about what the Westermen will do. When they hear that we have captured their women and children, they may besiege the Golden Tooth, Dacey said. The heir to Bear Island was a vicious fighter, as Jon knew well from Sparring, but she was also a voice of reason among the bellicose Northmen. Puffa, we would defeat these so-called lions. We have plenty of food and water, and the castle is strong. Umber replied, yes, but they could encircle the castle. They may not have enough men, but a siege would trap us here for weeks. And our forces in the Riverlands could use the supplies, Lady Maid said. I have a plan, my lords and ladies. It may be unpleasant, but it will hurt the Lannisters badly. Chet, bring in Lady Lefford and the Maester. Jon said. The Lady of the Tooth strode in, head held high. The Maester was not nearly as bold, his eyes looking down on the ground. How far away are other castles from the Tooth? By raven or by horse? Jon asked. Casterly Rock or Lannisport might take a raven 2 days, but for Ashmark and the Crag, they would get a message by nightfall, and as for horse, well, that depends. A man could leave Ashmark now and get here in a few hours if he drove his horse near death. Silver Hill would be a day's ride. They say that Oxcross is 3 days from Lannisport, but a warhorse might be faster, Maester Hamlin said. I will need your ravens. You will write this message in blood, Jon said. Blood? The old man squeaked, eyes bulging. Even the Small John looked surprised. Yes, blood, Jon said. Not human blood, you dolt. Chet, kill a pig or a goat. Write that the North has conquered the Tooth and destroyed the army at Oxcross. That we have prisoners, Lady Lefford, Lady Dorna Lannister, Lady Marbrand, and all the squires and heirs. Sprax, Prester, Farman, Marbrand, Sarret, Moreland. Dispatch the ravens immediately to Ashmark, Deepden, Silver Hill, Hornvale, Casterly Rock, and Lannisport. But Lord Snow, the Westermen will rush to attack us, Ser Stevron exclaimed. The Frey heir expressed the surprise clearly on the minds of all in the Solar. My uncles and cousins will stop at nothing to bring you down, Alizian said. Jon turned to the bold lady of the Golden Tooth. They can try. As news of Jon's order spread, the castle came alive. Mormonts, Manderleys, Karstarks, and Umberly soldiers fanned out, examining the towers and gatehouse, checking out the arrow slits and murder holes, and inspecting the merlins and crenelles of the battlements. Horses were stabled in the Tooth or put out to pasture past the walls facing the Riverlands. Sharpened stakes were placed in the dry moat, and arrows, bolts, and stones were gathered in areas where defenders could return fire. The Golden Tooth did not have the extensive sets of secondary defenses of Winterfell, but the rugged terrain and commanding height made the castle a difficult target. A more sensible and ruthless adversary might abandon the lady prisoners to their fate. Jon doubted that the 3 nearest fortresses, Ashmark, Silver Hill, and Hornvale, would react in such a calculating manner. The veteran war leaders were in the Riverlands, leaving at home a motley crew of lords past fighting age and aggressive young knights. Second, the nobles would be outraged by the ravens and the clear threat to their children and wives. In the Westerlands, fostering was common, and many houses sent children to squire with other families. And third, the Western had no idea the size of the Northern forces. At the very least, they would send an army to assess the situation. And given the insulting tone of the Raven, Jon was certain the lords would feel honor-bound to lead that host. In time, cooler heads might prevail, and the Westermen would realize that a siege would be costly and futile. But Jon Snow would not give them that time. He would force their hand. He finished one last raven for Bitterbridge. It was likely the message for Robb would be intercepted by the Tyrells, or Renly Baratheon. But the news would spread soon enough, and his letter carried scant details, only that they had won a battle and then cracked the tooth. Jon contemplated his plan. It would work, but then they would curse his name, and not just in the West. But what was honor compared to victory? Blood Raven had sacrificed his to save the Targaryens, once at Redgrass Field, and again at the Great Council, when he beheaded Aemys Blackfyre despite promising safe passage. Jon had sworn to serve and protect his brother in war. If Robb ruled the North with his true-born siblings, that was enough. It did not matter if Jon was disgraced. The lone wolf was not as important as the pack. He descended the stairs with Ghost by his side. There in the great hall, the lords and knights of the North and the Riverlands waited. Jon had directed Chad and Jurian to call for the domestic servants, and they stood anxiously next to the Lady of the Golden Tooth. Over the day, the prisoners had been sorted and sent to makeshift prisons. Even boys as young as 7 name days had been locked away. Only the ladies and the daughters had been allowed to stay. "Why are we here, Snow?" Black Walder called out. The Frey Knight had been infuriated when Jon ordered a halt to any looting. "The Westerland forces will arrive soon, perhaps in a day's time," Jon said. "We will be ready for them, Lord Snow. We have set up patrols and watches. We will be ready for any attack," Lady Mage said. "We need to prepare for a siege. We have 1,000 prisoners. Men, women, children, small folk, and highborn. From this moment on, until the Westerlords agree to terms, the prisoners will not eat. No meat or bread shall pass their mouths. Highborn or lowborn, old or young, no food at all," Jon said. "But there is more than enough bread and meat at the castle," a Lassian Lefford said. "Aye, and that is for the army only. Your uncles and cousins wish to defeat me. Let us see how quick they are to battle," Jon said. "Do you mean to kill us all?" Lassian cried. "No. Hunger will do that." Tywin Lannister's forces pillaged the Riverlands, looting, stealing the food, and destroying the fields. "Your ladies will see how it feels when your stomach aches for a slice of bread. Then you will understand what your brave lions did," Jon said. The heir to the Golden Tooth looked at him with hate. The others muttered in shock, and Dorna Lannister clutched her young daughter to her chest. "These are my orders, and I expect them to be followed. If I find anyone, even my men, feeding the prisoners, they will be thrown from the highest parapet into the moat below," Jon said. "The old lion will not stand for this. He will take revenge," Lady Jane of Akori said. "Harrenhal is over 400 miles away. You will be long dead before Tywin comes. Let us hope the Marbrands and the Serrets are wiser. You can dream of rescue or pray that the Westerlords have sense." "I would do the second for your children's sake," Jon said. The breakfast was a thin oat porridge with a few slices of apples and a small pitcher of warm cream. The castle was on a war footing, and servants, forbidden from feeding the prisoners, had prepared a minimal meal. Jon did not bother to take any of the slices of heavy oat bread, warmed over from last night. He had barely dipped his spoon when the Mormont ladies walked into the solar, with Meg in the lead, and frowns on all their faces. "Snow, I could barely sleep last night due to the bawling ladies," Meiji said. Jon had not thought the castle walls were so thin. "It has been less than half a day. Their bellies may be empty, but they are not dying from hunger," he said. "I do not want to see any children die," Lady Meg declared. Her daughters clearly agreed. "Neither do I." Jon put away the meager bowl. "When you swore your oaths to Winterfell, what did Lord Stark pledge? That we would always have a place by his hearth and mead at his table, and that he would ask no service that would bring House Mormont and dishonor." Lady Meg said, "I, in Ned Stark's name and my brother Robb, I will keep that vow," Jon said. "So this is all a feint. You don't really mean to starve these prisoners?" Yori said. Jon shook his head. "Do you know the problem with knights? They have a stick up their arse and always demand to be called Sareth," Jory said. "That too, but I meant in battle. Knights have a great need to show their bravery and value. They are more concerned about combats with other knights and their personal glory. So they lack discipline and they charge to the fight, when they would be better served to be patient." Jon said the ravens will provoke them. The knights and lords will look weak from the capture of their ladies and squires. They will rush here to prove their courage. What you say may be true, and this castle is certainly strong enough to resist. But a long siege will mean the deaths of many prisoners, Meg said. The siege will not be long. They are angry, and I will make their wrath will boil over, and angry men are easy to defeat, Jon said. All right, Snow, we trust you, but I hope you know what you are doing. Lady Maggie said, when we left River Run, I planned to strike at the tooth. That was why I wanted Mormont's soldiers as the bulk of my forces. I needed no harm to be done to any prisoners if we took the castle. That is important to getting what I want, Jon said. But what do you want, Snow? We have the castle. We have secured prisoners, gold and supplies. A puzzled Daisy asked. Much more than that. And for that, I need fear. Fear cuts deeper than swords, Jon said. It was still early in the morning when Wendell Manderly brought the prisoner to the Solar. Tybalt Marbrand walked in, hands shackled and face dirty from sleeping on the floor. The blond boy met Jon's gaze with somber but steady eyes. No one could doubt Tybalt's courage. He was remarkably composed for a boy of 10 and 1. Do you know why you are here? Jon said. Tybalt nodded. I broke my oath. I swore not to raise arms against the Northmen, but I joined my uncle's host at Oxcross. And what is the punishment for oathbreakers in the Westerlands? Jon asked. The boy did not blink. Death. For nobles, a beheading. For others, a hanging. Or if a point needs to be made, a crow's cage like the one for Uncle Tyrion. Do you wish to die? Jon said. No, Sarler, but I will not beg for my life. It was wrong to break my oath. Tybalt stopped. May I write a raven to say goodbye to my sister Jane at Ashmark? She has only 8 name days. Jon tapped his fingers on the desk. No. Any raven sent from the Golden Tooth will be mine. I will decide your fate today. But the guards will take you now to your mother, Lady Marbrand. Spend the remaining hours with her. Tybalt nodded and then walked off with Manderly men. The boy was brave, Jon thought, and deserved a better fate. War, though, demanded a price paid in blood. The trumpet blew first, and then the sentries on the walls raised the alarm. It was a cold, dreary day, and the mist persisted into the early afternoon. Only then did the army appear outside the castle. From Ashmark had come Lord Daemon Marbrand, with burnished bronze armor and a cloak of bronze and smoke gray. A wedge of Marbrand knights under their banner of a burning orange tree on a smoking field formed the bulk of the cavalry. There were other mounted lancers wearing the sigil of the purple unicorn on a silver field and a peacock in his pride on cream. House Brax and House Serret were the 2 closest houses to the Golden Tooth. There were dozens of other banners held aloft by tired men on tired horses, Liddens, Baneforts, Swefts, Paynes, and Sarwecks. Many of those must have ridden through the night. Besides Lord Marbrand's white charger, a big man rode on a large bay destrier in gilded ringmail. Such mail was not uncommon in the West, but only a Lannister would so openly display the gold lion on crimson. With a spyglass, Jon could see the roaring lion on the great helm, the heavy pauldrons, and a crimson fox fur cloak. That one had to be Sir Davin Lannister, and Jon reckoned that Stafford's son would be eager to avenge his father. The sun glittered off the points of 400 lances and 3 times as many spears. The force was smaller than Jon's host, but he had no doubt that this was only the vanguard. In a day or two, or perhaps even that night, foot soldiers would link with the cavalry, bringing archers, crossbowmen, and supply wagons. Jon stood up and summoned his commanders. He ordered the guards to bring the prisoners as well. Let's give a proper welcome to the Lannister army. They assembled on the highest tower facing west, overlooking the gatehouse and the drawbridge that the Northmen had stormed only a day ago. Jon gazed through the spyglass out in between the 2 merlins, built high enough to give archers complete protection and to hide the catapult behind him. It would take an extraordinary shot to hit the catapult with a siege weapon. Shooting from the tower roof offered no such difficulty, which was why Lannister forces remained a quarter of a mile away. Even the best archer would need a powerful longbow to reach such a great distance. Who has the best eyes among us? Jon asked, holding out the spyglass. Lyra does. She can hit a shadow cat from 120 paces away with a spear. Jerry said to her sister's delight. That's not so hard. I can do that too, as can any man of the last hearth. You have to be a good hunter and tracker when you live in the true north, Small Jon boasted. Jon handed Lyra the spyglass. She looked out into the crowd of fluttering banners and men pitching tents. Snow, what do you expect me to see? It is just a lot of cunts with fancy signs on their shields and horses, Lyra said. Jon sighed. The men in front, Lyra. Presumably, they are the leaders. Their sigils and anything unusual. Well, there is the blondie that Daisy smacked around on the last day. He had a big chin and hair like a little Ponzi girl, although he has grown a beard and a mustache, so not ladylike. There are a bunch of people wearing orange trees, Lyra said. One of them is old with white hair. There is another one next to him, and he is pointing his fingers at the castle. How old is he? Jon asked. Not as old as the old man, that's for sure, Lyra said as her sisters snorted. Maybe 5 name days older than Daisy. That may be, learned Marbrand, Lord Daemon's second son. Was he at Ashermark? Jon asked the crowd of prisoners. My father and my grandfather were both at our family castle, Tybolt answered. Good, bring out the other prisoners, Jon said. 5 men were forced onto the roof, escorted by a dozen warriors. These were not ladies, or the children of Western nobles, or Stafford Lannister. They were the guards that had served Dorna Lannister when she fled to the Sept. This one is the captain, a Mormont man said, pushing forward a burly man with bushy hair. Thank you, I will take it from here, Jon said. He took the rope and tied several knots about the man over and through the arms and at the ankles. There was a stunned silence, as Jon made certain there could be no movement. Jon beckoned to Small Jon and Eddard Karstark. With the help of the 2 tall men, they half-carried and half-dragged the prisoner to the catapult. The Lannister man began to scream when he realized that he was about to be placed in the bucket of the long wooden arm by the 7. Stafford Lannister gasped. Snow, you promised the prisoners mercy if they surrendered. The ex-Lysane Lefford said. But these ones didn't surrender. Lady Lannister's guards barricaded the bell tower. They did not take Small Jon Umber's offer, and only when Lady Dorna ordered them to open the door did they give up, Jon said. Do you have any last words? The prisoner was too frightened to answer, and the Small Jon and Eddard held the arms and hands while Jon cranked the winch with the help of Jerry and Chet. The arm bent down as the frame tensed with potential energy. My lord, the men only did what I asked. They merely followed orders, Dorna said. Wrong orders. He aimed the catapult directly at Ser Davin and the 2 Marbrands. It would not reach the command tent, of course, but the Westermen would hear and see the fate of the guard. Jon counted down with his right hand, and as he lowered the last finger, Small Jon and Eddard backed away. The arm swung forward, hurling the Lannister man high into the sky, like a fat wiggling worm. The screaming guard plummeted down to the ground, crashing with a loud thud 200 yards away, and even without the spyglass, Jon could see blood pooling on the ground. We have 4 others. Jon began to tie down the second man, and the Mormonts stood by, weapons ready for any resistance. He had used a bit too much of rope on the guard captain, and would try to be less wasteful with the others. This is shameful, Sir Stafford said, and to do so in front of these ladies, whose tender eyes should not be exposed to such violence. Jon chuckled. I am sure they know men die in war. The Small Jon had gagged the man rather than listen to his pitiful mewling. The lever sprang again, and the second guard was hurled in the same trajectory as the first, landing only a few yards away. More rope. Snow? They are looking this way now? That Lannister knight and the 2 tree people? Later said. Good. Jon looked at the cowering captives. Don't worry, Sir Stafford. You are too valuable to kill. We are indebted to you for Oxcross and the Golden Tooth. I would rather hurl one of your 2 daughters over the wall first. And Tybolt. This will not be how you will die. The blond boy nodded grimly, while many ladies and children burst into sobbing. It was clear that the bastard of Winterfell felt no mercy. Jon continued tying the knots. 3 more guards would be enough to convey a serious message to the Westerlords. Jon sat in the solar, examining the different specimens of the willow tree. There was the green weeping willow, the sigil of House Rhaegar. There was the white willow, whose leaves were paler and flowers were longer, no doubt to attract bees. In the north, there were dwarf willows that were more shrubs than trees. Still, the bark shares the same quality, although Jon was hard-pressed to figure out how to measure it effectively. Pain was a difficult thing to compare. He heard a knock on the door. Jon put the samples away to the side. Daisy walked in, escorted by Perwyn Frey. My mother wants to know when you wish to speak with the Westermen. They have sent messengers to the castle under a flag of Parley. Tell Lady Meigs. Later today. but I only wish to see their leaders, and I will speak to them with House Mormont and other Northmen present." Daisy nodded and turned to go. Perwyn did not. "What is the matter, Perwyn?" Jon asked. "Lord Snow, it is Sir Steveron. He has gotten much weaker today," Perwyn said. "Bring him to the maester's room." "I will see him there," Jon said. Steveron Frey looked more tired than a man of 66 maimed days should. The skin of his face and his mouth were dry as dust, and he gasped for air, breathing in shallow bursts on the table. Jon swiftly measured his pulse, felt the temperature, and examined his eyes. "Maester, the injury is on my hip. Should I remove my clothes?" Steveron asked. Jon had no desire to see a half-naked Frey. "No need for that yet. How does your head feel?" "Dizzy. Everything seems blurry," Steveron said. "He threw up twice this morning, Lord Snow. He could only keep down a bit of water." Jon felt the wrist again and measured the rapid and irregular heartbeat. "Do you see yellow?" Steveron gawked at Jon like he was an Essie warlock. But, how did you know?" "I had not told Perwyn, and he was with me all day." "You are not injured, Sir Steveron. You are poisoned. If you ate the leaves of the foxglove plant, you would have these symptoms: blurred vision with a yellow tint, nausea, dilated pupils, changed heartbeat. A small amount would make your heart pump faster, but too much can kill. Someone gave you this, either in your food or on your skin," Jon said. "It must be Blackwalder. When you were injured at Oxcross, he gave you an ointment to apply to the scrape," Perwyn said. "He could have mashed up the seeds and leaves into a paste. Clever of him. It is an uncommon poison, unlike powdered greycaps or nightshade," Jon said. "Will I die, Snow? Will I never see my children again?" Steveron wailed. Given that Blackwalder was his eldest son's child, Jon had grave doubts about the intelligence of that comment. "I can treat the poison. It is important you drink as much water as possible. And King's Copper." Jon took out a large bunch of the reddish-brown herb. "I will brew this into a poultice, and you should apply it to all the areas that the bomb touched. I will also give you some willow bark for any pain. It will help keep the nausea down so you can get some food." "Many thanks, my lord," Steveron said. "What will you do about Blackwalder?" Jon asked. "I am not certain what we can do. He took back the bomb and will likely have thrown it away. We will not be able to prove it," Perwyn said angrily. "He is kin, and family is important." Steveron said, "Your grandson tried to become a kinslayer. Blackwalder failed only because Perwyn came to me this afternoon. Had he waited a few more days, you would be dead." Jon said, "Life at the Twins is different, sir. My father, Lord Walder, says that family and blood are the most important things," Steveron said. The old man closed his eyes, and Jon began to mix the pungent concoction of King's Copper, fire milk, and willow bark. The younger Frey thanked him profusely, but Jon thought Perwyn's attention should have been focused more on Blackwalder. He doubted that this would be the last attempt and wondered who else had been involved. The hall was silent that night, when the 4 representatives of the Westerlands entered. The 2 Marbrands, Sir Davin Lannister, and a nameless Sarsfield knight. They wore mail shirts, but had been forced to leave their weapons at the gatehouse, and searched once more on the approach to the Great Hall. Jon sat with the small Jon at his left and Lady Mormont at his right. Had Ser Ron been well, the Frey knight might have taken the seat to Jon's left, but the meeting was dominated by Northmen, Mormonts, Manderleys, Karstark, and Umber. Lady Alysanne sat next to Maege, and the other noble women huddled nearby with children. The Marbrands and Sir Davin looked with concern at Tybalt and his mother, and with a bit of disgust at Sir Stafford, who stared glumly at the table. Daemon Marbrand was a stately lord, whose long hair and beard had turned white with the years. He walked with a limp, a wound from the Battle of the Fair Isle. The bard sang the sea turned red from iron-born blood when Stannis Baratheon had bottled the Iron Fleet up in those straits. Clearly, the blood of others had also been shed there. His second son, Laurent, had dark copper hair combed back on a pale, unsmiling face. Ser Laurent clenched his hands tightly as if he wished to draw a sword. House Marbrand was one of the principal houses of the Westerlands, but Lord Marbrand deferred to Ser Daemvin. The knight with the shaggy blonde hair, bristling beard, and thick side whiskers was a Lannister, and that gave him command even in the presence of the most powerful retainers. "Snow," Sir Davin grunted as he sat down first, followed by the other Westerlords. Quick introductions were made, and the 2 Marbrands sat at the right and left of Sir Davin. Davin glanced around, and then raised his bushy eyebrows. Snow, where is the bread and salt? I've not granted you guest right, and even if you did, nothing would be served. We are not in the habit of feeding enemies. Lady Lefford, please explain, Jon said. The heiress of the Golden Tooth smiled bitterly. Lord Snow has declared that prisoners are not to eat. They have not fed anyone for the last day, and that includes ladies and children. Do you mean to force us to depart by this cowardly behavior? Lord Marbrand demanded. Retreat if you like. Your women and children will still not be fed, Jon said. The Westermen gnashed their teeth, and Sir Laurent and the Sarsfield men reddened with rage. Lord Daemon reacted with greater composure. Come, sirrah, we can be reasonable men. I was at Pike when your father led the charge. It was a strange castle, more like stacks of rocks about to fall into the sea. Ned Stark was a good man. He would not treat women and children like this. Ned Stark is dead. He was a prisoner as well, and his head was chopped off at the steps of the great Sept of Baelor, Jon said. Because he committed treason against the Iron Throne, he confessed to the crowd. Sir Laurent said hotly. Jon stared at the younger Marbrand before turning back to Sir Davin. Men of honor do strange things when their children are threatened. They tell me that my sister Sansa is beaten often in front of the court, and yet she writes a letter declaring our father a traitor to her dear sweet Joffrey. What do you think your wives and mothers will do to save their children? What will they say when their children beg the servants for a scrap of bread? Jon said. What do you want, Snow? You treated the prisoners fairly at River Run. We want our families safe. Do you want gold and silver for your captives? Sir Daemon asked. I want Ned Stark returned alive. My sisters, Sansa and Arya, safe home at Winterfell, and Joffrey's head on a pike, Jon said. Sir Davin snorted. You know those terms cannot be met. The first is impossible, and for the second and third, we do not rule the Iron Throne. If you cannot give me what I want, why should I grant you anything? Jon said, equally blunt. More men will come. We have 1,500 now. In a week's time, it will double, and then double again. And so long as you hold the children of the Westerlands, our numbers will rise. I admit you have won your battles, but we can still win the war. I can grant you fair terms. You will allow you to leave the castle with your plunder, but free the children and the noble women. It is a better deal than Tywin Lannister would give, Davin said. Jon laughed. I saw your forces at Oxcross. Tallow boys and greybeards who fled from the first charge. Ser Stafford emptied the docks and brothels of Lannisport for his army. Your fighters are east, at Harrenhal. Lord Crackhall spoke to me proudly of his empty castle and his 3 sons serving with Tywin. Even if all of the garrisons in the west muster for the attack, I may still win at the Golden Tooth. Your men do not even encircle the castle. Will you conduct a siege only from the western side? Your threats are empty, Lannister, Jon said. The men are green, but we can bring a lot of them. There are thousands who survived the Battle of the Camps. Even at Oxcross, there are sellswords and free riders that have escaped. Ser Forley Prester is no fool, and he is gathering men at case and feast fires, Davin said. Jon shrugged. That will take weeks. By then, the Golden Tooth will be a charnel house full of dead children. And let's say the Westerlands assemble their mighty host of potboys and mercenaries in front of the Tooth. What if the North wins? Robb won at the Whispering Wood and the camps. We won again at Oxcross. If we smash your men at the Tooth, the West would be defenseless. The North could pillage and plunder without mercy. Your castles might stand, but your remaining lords would be trapped, sitting behind walls while their lands burn. The old lion, Sir Laurent, started. Yes, Tywin Lannister will fly over River Run in a winged chariot and save all of you. I did not realize a lion was half a falcon. Jon jabbed before a cold smile crossed his face. If the North defeats your forces at the Tooth, it would please me greatly to see Lord Tywin back to the West. We would prepare him a welcome that he would not soon forget. Daemon Marbrand spoke before his outraged son. Lord Snow, men die in war, but that will never change. But women and children do not need to die from hunger. Even as enemies, we can come to such an arrangement. Aye, there is something. Lord Lafford used the Tooth to hold supplies, food that he intended to ship east to Lannister forces at River Run. We want that food, Jon said. But, a perplexed Lord Daemon looked at the equally surprised Lady Lefford. You already have it, sir. You have captured those supplies, Ida-san said. No, you misunderstand. I want you to continue those shipments. The bounty of the Westerlands to be shipped to the Tooth. If the supplies continue, I will feed the ladies and the prisoners, and then the stores will be sent to Riverrun. Jon said. You cannot expect that. We would be feeding the northern armies. Sir Davin said. Exactly, but your women and children would survive. We would not raid further into the Westerlands, Jon said. We cannot speak for House Lannister. Ashemerk must follow Casterly Rock. That is true for all of the houses sworn to the Lion. Lord Daemon said, Tywin Lannister is far away, and the prisoners are starving now, but you can decide whether his good opinion matters more than the sons and daughters of the Western houses. And there is another matter. Tybalt, step forward, Jon said. The tall blonde boy stood up and walked forward. His mother clung to his elbow, unshed tears in her eyes. Jon tossed a silver stag. Surprised, the boy caught the coin in his right hand. Snow, can we not pay a ransom for the boy? Sir Davin asked. An oath is an oath. Tybalt Marbrand broke his sworn oath. Bring me a block, Jon said. You would kill a boy in front of his mother and father, the Searchfield man said in outrage. Among the ladies present, only Axelon Lefford did not gasp with shock. Jon did not respond to the comment. There was no point defending himself, and his actions would be clear soon enough. Chet handed him the duskin bag, and he took out 3 items: a sharp, thin knife in a leather scabbard, a small glass jar of a thick white liquid, and a strange contraption, a long leather belt with a sturdy bronze screw attached near the buckle. Chet moved off to the side and thrust a small cleaver into the fire. Jon took Tybalt's right arm and made 2 thin slashes near the wrist with the thin blade. He unscrewed the jar and applied milk of the poppy to both cuts. Then he wrapped the leather belt tightly about the forearm, eliciting a grunt when he turned the screw and the heavy bronze press bit into flesh. What can you feel? Jon asked. I cannot feel my arm or my wrist, Master Snow, the boy said, perplexed. Jon took the short and sharp cleaver from the fire. He placed Tybalt's wrist on the block, and to the shock of the crowd, Jon slammed the blade down, slicing the right hand cleanly off. There was an initial gush of blood, but Tybalt did not scream unlike his fainting mother and his enraged father. The boy was brave, Jon thought, and deserved a better fate. He took out a linen square and dipped it into a pale red liquid. This will sting, Jon said. He applied the fire milk to the open wound. Tybalt's blood mixed with the lighter red of the ointment. Jon tightened the bronze screw on the belt again, and then took out another small jar. This liquid was white but much thinner than the milk of the poppy. Take this. Only a little bit at a time, but it will reduce any pain, Jon said, motioning to Chet. You bastard, Ser Laurent yelled, lunging over the table for Jon, only to be held back by Ser Davin and Lord Daemon. Stop, Laurent, Davin said. We are under the flag of Parley. Your son is hurt but not dead, and the dire wolf would kill you even if the guards didn't. Ghost's red eyes glinted in the firelight, but the wolf made no move to attack. He broke his oath, and he lost his hand, Yard said, as the Wintertown boys took a stone-faced Tybalt from the room. But hunger is different. That may cost him his head. You may wait for the great Tybalt Lannister to return west, but your children do not have much time. Jon waited in the darkness, alone with his thoughts under the waning crescent moon. There were dozens and dozens of armed Northmen close by, and Eddard Karstark, Smalzian, Umber, and the Mormont girls had all volunteered when he explained the plan. Silence was of paramount importance, so no one, not even the voluble Smalzian, spoke. They camped atop the once-hidden goat trail that wound down the defile to the valley below. The track was stony and narrow, and men marching up or down could hide easily behind ridges and rocks, even without darkness. Lifford guards had not caught a single glimpse when Northern and Riverland forces sallied forth to Oxcross. Jon would not let the Marbrands return that trick. Fire was forbidden, so the men and women had little to do but peer into the night, wondering if the Westermen would attack. Only 1 man in 4 was awake, with others dozed, confident that those on patrol would raise the alarm swiftly. Many stretched out on the dirt and rocks, wrapped up in furs and thick cloaks. Jon had no need to rest that night, nor did he waste energy staring into the dark. He considered his visions, the doom of Valyria and the eruption of the 14 Flames, Lord Bloodraven and the Great Bastards, and finally the Targaryen princesses, consumed by the Iron Throne. The last princess haunted his dreams, tall and slender in a pale sleeveless pink dress with white lace, a sharp contrast to her cinnamon brown skin. She smiled impishly and reached for him with her arms. Her eyes were not the dark brown and near black of her mother and the Martells. They were like her father's deep purple and indigo. Beloved, Rhaenys whispered. But that could not be. Rhaenys Targaryen died 16 years ago, butchered with her infant brother before her mother. She had been stabbed 100 times, her bloody body presented as a war trophy by the Lannisters. Jon was no fool with a head full of songs and stories. In life, the monsters won, and Rhaenys had not been smuggled out of the Red Keep. Beloved, she whispered again, the purple eyes twinkling with mischief. Jon wondered if he was going mad. The Targaryens danced close to the edge of madness, and those that dreamed often fell over. But if this was madness, then it was a lovely vision. And in some less cruel world, Rogier's would have lived, a sweet, gracious girl who grew up to be a kind and clever maiden. She had a small black kitten named Balerion, after the great black dragon of Aegon I. The girl died, but perhaps the cat still lived, skulking in the shadows of the Red Keep. The direwolf broke the reverie, prodding Jon with a muzzle, the hard garnet eyes looking down the trail. Jon could feel the tension under the thick white fur and the anxiety of the hunt. Ghost had picked up the scent of the Westermen. In the Wolf's Wood, the pack of direwolves could locate elk and deer miles away by smell alone. It was time, and Jon stood up, whispering to the men on watch and ordering that everyone be roused but remain silent. There was still no sign of the enemy, but Jon had no doubt in Ghost's senses. The path down the pass began at a large clearing, off to the side of the river road. Mormont's men stood next to the road and formed a sturdy shield wall several rows strong, with long spears ready to thrust. The steel shields, painted with a rampant black bear, would be the first sight, and possibly the last sight, the Westermen would see. Multiple lines of archers were hidden behind rocks, positioned on the curve of a semicircle. Jon crouched on one side with Ghost and the Mormont girls. On the other side, the small Jon, Eddard Karstark, and Perwyn Frey waited, ready to spring. Jon had told the other commanders to spring the trap only when at least a dozen Westermen emerged. "I think I hear something," Jory whispered on Jon's right. After a moment, Daisy chimed in quietly. "Aye, there are faint sounds." Just beyond the clearing, the shadowy forms of warriors stepping forward in a crouch behind shields appeared. Jon raised his hand, signaling to the archers to wait. In the gloom, he could see a mixture of sigils, burning trees, green arrows, purple stars, and black spears. Ceredivin's crimson lion was not among them. There was no longer any need for silence. "Draw," Jon cried. Behind him, a dozen bows were nocked. The darkness made precision impossible, but archers shooting in a line did not need to be that accurate. "Loose." The shafts flew into the air. Some landed harmlessly on rocks or shields, but others struck home, eliciting screams of pain. The shafts continued to fly into shadowy shapes. From the trail, a voice cried loudly, "Forward! Charge!" for Casterly Rock. Men rushed into the clearing, brandishing swords and uttering battle cries. The words were different for each house, but they sounded much like Lord Roland Crakehall. None so fierce chant, a mixture of courage and stupidity. The shield wall marched forward, announcing their fearsome presence. The front rank knelt, extending their spears at a low angle, the butts braced against the rocky ground, blades jutting at thighs and knees. The second rank pressed closely behind, shields interlinking, and the spears extended at the height of the chest. The last rank strapped their shields on their backs and held the spears with both hands in an overarm thrust over the doubled shields in front. The steel wall had few weaknesses and multiple layers of stabbing blades. Even as the Westermen realized the danger in front, the Northmen attacked from the sides. Ghost ripped apart men effortlessly, biting through throats and mauling arms. Lyra, Jari, and Daisy caved in the right side, battering men to the ground, while the Smallgen and Eddard engaged from the left. Jon swept out with the halberd, a two-handed polearm with three methods of attacking: the axe blade, a long spike, and a hook on the back. Jon used the last to drag enemies to the ground. The Westermen attack had failed. They began to retreat, inching their way back to the trail with shield raised. The warriors in front were too disciplined to flee. The Smallgen grabbed a massive stone with both hands and with a guttural cry, hurled it over his head. It thudded to the ground, partially blocking the entrance to the goat trail. The knights were trapped and would be forced to turn to run, exposing themselves to spears and swords in the back. "Archers, shoot at the trail," Jon said. The lines of archers lifted their bows to the sky and rained volley after volley of arrows on the path. Men crouched behind shields. The shower of arrows was more scenic than effective. Unlike the Raven's Teeth, Jon's archers were not shooting from great height or with powerful weirwood bows. The hail of arrows halted the enemy in their tracks, making them easy prey for the attack on three sides. The Westermen, jammed into a small space, began to surrender and throw down their weapons. Jon examined the shields for the sigil of the burning orange tree on a gray field. He found Sarah Lawrence surrounded by other House Marbrand knights and men-at-arms. Lawrence had been wounded on his right shoulder. It did not appear lethal. Unlike the torn-off limbs and ripped bellies that spilled blood and guts on the rocky ground. "Snow, we have captured over 24 and killed thrice that number. There may be more bodies lying on the trail as well," Daisy said. "I doubt they will attack again, but set up a guard near the entrance. 30 spearmen could hold the path against 10 times their number. And build a wall to protect our fighters against any ranged attack. And for our archers to fire under cover," Jon said. "How in the seven hells did you know we would attack?" Sarah Lawrence gasped. "This path was hidden when Ghost discovered it. But only 2 days ago, 2,000 men rode their horses down the trail. You would have to be blind and dumb not to find it. I knew that the Westermen would thirst for revenge, and what better way than to surround our castle by surprise. But night work is not night's work, sir. You fell into a trap," Jon said. "And what will happen? Will you starve us to death, or kill us here?" Lawrence said. "That depends on your father. Let us hope he is wiser than his son," Jon said, as the new captives were taken into the castle. Jon did not sleep that night. When they returned to the castle, Maester Haemon examined the prisoners under the eyes of Jon and the Wintertown boys. The battle had been one-sided, and few Northmen had suffered even a minor wound. The Westermen were in worse condition, but the injured received good care. Sir Laurent would recover the full use of his right arm. Unlike River Run, the Golden Tooth was well supplied with fire milk, vinegar, and dream wine. Then he sent for Lady Mormont and Wendell Manderly. Even Sir Stifron managed to make it to the Solar, much due to the chagrin of Black Walder. The small Jon, Eddard Karstark, Lyra, and Jory also attended, happy to recount their own part of the battle, while Daisy Mormont took charge of the castle defense. Small Jon took great delight in exaggerating the size of the rock he hurled. In a few days, the stone would grow into a boulder, the boulder would weigh more than a horse, and the small Jon would strike down a dozen men with one mighty toss. The Northmen toasted and laughed when Jon spoke about their success. No one asked questions about the prisoners. Their fate was clearly in Jon's hands. Later he sat alone in the Solar, the other commanders having retired to bed. The light of outside had turned a soft shade of blue, the color of the sky in that short period when the sun hung below the horizon. It was a good time to think, to plan, and to reflect over the events of the past few days and the battles to come. But when Jon closed his eyes, all he saw was her, Rhaenys Targaryen, and her sweet, gentle smile. She had only had 3 days when she died, and now Jon was using children as human shields to damage the Lannisters. Lady Dorna's daughter, Jaincy, had only 3 days as well. The girl had not died, but with no food. That could change quickly. Bloodraven told Jon that he was a dragon, hidden as a wolf. Was that a lie? Jon did not know. But the dreams were too strong to ignore. Dragons answered, to neither gods nor men. If Rhaenys had a dragon and not a kitten, the Lannisters would have been served fire and blood. The castle was quiet in the early hours of morning. Jon inspected the many towers, making the rounds only with Ghost at his side. He could have forged through a raven, but he wanted to receive reports from the many lookouts posted last night. The high turrets of the Golden Tooth commanded an excellent view of the countryside. And yet no one had seen the battle last night. The watchers on the walls certainly heard the commotion and saw shapes retreat in the darkness, but the goat trail remained hidden from their eyes. That morning, there had been little activity in the Lannister camp, save for a few stragglers joining the Western army. They were too small in number to make up for the casualties of the night's skirmish. Jon made his way to the infirmary. As he passed, the guards stood taller, and the servants shrank back. No one met his eyes, no one dared touch the white wolf at his side. There were a dozen makeshift pallets for the wounded Westermen. A tired Maester Haemon greeted him at the door. Jon told the old man to rest, and Chet took him to the curtained-off bed, where Tybolt Lannister dozed, half asleep. He examined the boy's right arm. The tourniquet was still attached, but Chet had followed the orders of gradually loosening the screw. The wound was clean from the fire milk, the bleeding had stopped, and the skin slowly beginning to scab under the bandages. Then Jon noticed a few crumbs of bread hidden under Tybolt's doublet. "Chet, who was alone with Tybolt last night?" Jon asked. "Just the Wintertown boys, Maester. We never let Haemon alone with him. I watched him for most of the night, but Jerry helped when I needed a few winks." Chet admitted, "Bring Jerry on to me." The blond, green-eyed boy flinched slightly when he saw Jon's stern face. Jerry may have been no bastard, but he could sense trouble. "Jerry, what do you have to say?" Jon asked as Chet averted his eyes. The words came out in a rush. "Maester, I did feed him, but he was suffering. I gave him a stope of barley stew and half a heel of bread. I thought war was strategies and battles, not starving prisoners," the boy said, eyes downcast. "Wars make monsters of us all," Jon said. "I fed a few others, Sir Martin Lannister and the little girl. I am sorry, and I will accept my punishment," Jerry admitted. Jon sighed. Somehow, among the dozens and dozens of prisoners, Jerry had found his cousins. "I promised your mother you would be safe. I understand your feelings. Be more discreet," Jon said. "Maester," Chet said, tugging on Jon's arm. "He is waking up." Tybolt Marbrand sat up and looked around groggily. The boy's green eyes became alert when he saw Jon. "Lord Snow," the boy said. "How do you feel this morning?" Jon interrupted. The boy looked at his maimed arm. "It is strange. I feel no pain, but I thought milk of the poppy made you sleepy." "Milk of the poppy was used only once. Last night and this morning, you drank a distillation of willow bark. It relieves pain, but too much can be a poison as well," Jon said. Tybolt began once more. "Lord Snow, I heard the new prisoners come in during the night. Maester Haemon says that my father was among them. He was injured, but should recover," Jon said. "My lord, I beg mercy for my father. He only wished to rescue me. Surely you can see that. If your lord father attempted to save you, that would be expected." "Please," Tybolt said. Except Jon's lord father was dead. Laurent Marbrand had attempted to encircle the castle. Any attempt to rescue Tybolt would have raised alarms at the castle, and the strategy to control the River Rose would have failed when Sir Wylis Manderly arrived in a day or two. A few thousand more northern troops would have smashed the Lannister forces. But the boy was pleading for his family, and Jon could not begrudge his spirit. "Mercy in war is not easy, but I will take into account your request." "Do you feel well enough to walk?" Jon said. Tybolt nodded. Jon gave orders, and then opened the curtain, allowing the early morning sun to stream into the corner. He walked the boy over to see his father, Laurent Marbrand. Soon, Chet came back with Lady Cassella. The parents hugged their son, and Jon left the small family alone, but under heavy guard. Jon sat at the table with only Maggie Mormont and Alysanne Lefford as the Westermen trudged into the solar. That morning, the Lannister camp had raised a flag for Parley, and Davin Lannister and Daemon Mormont were escorted through the castle. The Lord of Ashmark had aged a great deal in a day. "My son?" Daemon asked. "Wounded, but he should recover. He is with his wife and Tybolt now," Jon replied. "Was it only his idea to attack?" We told the idiot not to be a hero, and that we should scout the trail in the morning first." Ser Davin snorted. "Where do we go from here, Snow? Do you plan to starve everyone still?" Daemon asked. "I have not changed my demands. I want food and supplies for my men. Give me that and there will be no fighting. Not in the Westerlands, at least," Jon said. "Lord Jaxley will be wroth, but I will not see my son. Good daughter and only grandson die. I cannot speak for the lords, but Ashmark will withdraw," Daemon said. "And what about you, Sir Davin? Will you watch as your father, mother, and two younger sisters starve?" Jon said. "Snow, you really are a bastard, and I am not referring to your birth. Tywin may have my head for this." Gavin rubbed his thick brown beard. "If we deliver what you ask, how do we know you will keep your part of the bargain? How do we know you won't rape the women or kill the boys? How have you been treated, Lady Lefford?" Jon turned to the heir of the tooth. "You mean besides not being fed for 2 days and watching children go hungry? Alicent snapped before gaining her composure. Ser Davin and Lord Marbrand, the Northmen, have not harmed us. They have protected the women, and I have not seen or heard of any abuse. I will make you this promise. So long as you send the supplies we ask, the prisoners will not be harmed. I swear that on the honor of House Stark, when the war ends, they will be returned to you, safe and sound, Jon said. Very well, you will have the grain and meat. Today we will send what supplies we have in camp, and we will deliver shipments to the Chuth every Sunnight. Divin answered. Jon looked at Davin carefully. The knight was outspoken and surly, but seemed honest and had a great deal of authority. There were few men who could speak for House Lannister in the West. I promise to treat the prisoners well, but if you send thieves in some foolish scheme, or smuggle men in the sacks of grain and meat, then they will all suffer. I will answer such tricks harshly, and the blood of your ladies and children will be on your heads. Davin nodded. We will not forget your words, Snow, he said. Jon could not tell whether that was meant to be a threat. Lord Marbrand, I will return your son Laurent and the men we captured yesterday. Why would you do that, Snow? Davin asked suspiciously. Ser Laurent is hot-headed, but his son is more sensible. Tybalt pled for his father. It is his boon that I grant. We do not need thousands of captives. We will set free the low-born prisoners also, after they swear oaths not to raise arms against the North or to attack the Riverlands. Or do plan to break your word if Ser Laurent is returned. Jon said, I care for the lives of my good daughter and grandson as well, and many Leffords are related to me. It is not for my son alone that I fear, Lord Daemon said. Don't think this changes anything, Snow. House Lannister will seek revenge. Davin cried. That definitely was a threat. I look forward to Lord Tywin's response, Jon replied. The guards escorted Ser Davin and Lord Daemon to the infirmary. Jon gave orders to have a large lunch prepared for the prisoners. The Wintertown boys rushed away to deliver that message to the kitchen and the dungeons. Lyanna Lefford looked wary, but slunk away to tell her aunts and other ladies. After the Westerman and lady had left, Major Mormont stood up to go, but turned first to Jon. You spared many lives, but they still hate and fear you. They spit even on your mercy. Jon shrugged. Deeds matter, not words. They made promises, and so have I. So long as we get the food, Lady Mormont, I would ask that you hold the tooth for the North. Any fresh recruits from the West would need to march far south on the Gold Road. The march would be exhausting and they would be too late to help. The supplies from the West will keep the soldiers and horses well fed. I trust your fighters to behave and stay on guard. Aye, Snow, she hesitated. Would you have let them die? The babes and the women folk? I am a wolf. I would kill to defend my pack. Even as he spoke, the words sounded hollow to Jon. He was not just a wolf. As Bloodraven noted, why else would he dream of Renly? You are a bloody wolf, Snow. What will you do after the tooth? Mage said. Go east. I have a lion to kill, Jon said. If he never ate another fruit tart in his life, Robb would be happy. The Reach was famed for the fertile land that yielded a lush and colorful bounty, red and white grapes, fire plums, peaches, melons, apricots, apples, lemons, oranges, and half a dozen different berries. Lord Caswell's servants rushed here and there with trays of freshly baked pastries, with all of these fruits and more. There were golden cakes shaped like roses, swans made of cream resting on beds of tart pomegranate seeds, and spiced honey biscuits dusted with cinnamon and sugar. Where is the cheese plate? Lady Olenna's sharp voice froze the brown-haired servant boy ladling cold fruit soup into Mage Tyrell's silver cup. The cheese will be served after the cakes, the boy stammered. The Tyrell matriarch raised her eyebrows, and the frightened boy rushed off, leaving Mace with a half-filled cup. Quite right, a knight simpered. Dessert without cheese is like a beauty with only one eye. Lady Olenna was about to unload on the stout man, but fortunately for the table, a wheel of buttery cheese arrived. Pale white on the outside with a yellow wedge cut out, Marguerite Tyrell reached out her dainty white hands and pierced the wedge with a strange tool, 2 silver prongs coming from the ivory haft, while her right hand cut down with a wide-bladed steel knife with 4 circular holes in the blade. Are you staring at my granddaughter's hands? Olenna said. The eyes at the high table swiveled to Robb, and he could see smirks on both Willis and Garland. Lady Catelyn was mortified, but Mace was too busy, still focused on the missing soup. Marguerite blushed prettily. "No, my lady, I have never seen anything like that before." Robb pointed to the fancy tools now resting next to the cheese on a porcelain plate. "The cheese? Surely you must have cheese even in the northern wastelands." Olenna J-paid. "Grandmother, he means the cheese fork," Marjorie said. "You not have forks in the north? I knew it was cold and harsh up where the Starks live, but I did not realize there was no cutlery," Olenna said. Robb bit back a retort. "We have forks and knives and spoons, but we don't have so many." There were 3 forks to the left of the plate and 2 knives and a spoon to the right. Nestled between the water and the wine goblet was a fancier inlaid spoon and fork, and there was a second plate to hold a napkin on the left. All the forks, knives, and spoons were different sizes and designs. It was all quite confusing. "I see," the Queen of Thorns softened a bit. "It is only at the high table. At the other tables, they only have one set, and further down the hall, men eat with only a knife and their hands. The king must inspire the people with his might and grandeur. If you wish to be a king, men must believe that you are the king." Rosalie looked every inch a Baratheon king. He was a powerful man, taller than Robb, with broad shoulders, thick coal-black hair, and a handsome bearded face. He dressed lavishly, a dark green and gold velvet doublet, and a half-cape made of cloth of gold fastened with an emerald brooch. The cloak alone cost more than many a suit of plate armor. He wore a jeweled crown adorned with golden antlers, yet Robb doubted that Aegon the Conqueror cared at all about forks or plates. Robert Baratheon had loved eating and drinking, but he had won the throne with a spiked iron warhammer, not feasts. It had been 2 full days since the Raven from Storm's End had come. Robb knew that there had been some preparations, wagons packed and horses readied for the march, but the men of the Reach and the Stormlands bickered over who would ride and in what order. In every meal, lords had trudged from the lower tables to plead their case before Mace Tyrell and his children, while other members of the small council, Tarley, Fossaway, and Rowan, gritted their teeth. Robb had been given the great honor of sitting next to Queen Marguerite on the raised platform of the high table. His lady mother sat on the other side in between Jon Fossaway and Mathis Rowan. The 6 members of Robb's honor guard were spread out in the great hall, divided by their status, with Patrick Mallister as heir to Seagard, with the best seat in Olivar Frey as the 18th of Lord Walder's sons, the worst. Olivar was forced to eat with the lowest squires and pages, sitting at a bench at the very far end of the hall with hunting dogs and tomcats. Robb grimaced as he thought about the meals at Winterfell. Before he departed for the Citadel, his brother had been banished to the back benches on feast days. Lady Catelyn refused to let Jon sit with his siblings, and his father never said a single word. Robb loved his parents dearly, but they had treated his half-brother poorly. He could see that now, as he looked over the tables and tables of nobles and knights. In the Reach, the highborn scrambled to curry favor with their liege lords. Jon had never done any of that, and never complained about Lady Stark's disdain. "My brother is like Ghost, a dire wolf, and yet apart from the pack. Jon deserved a better fate." The blunted sword slammed against the steel shield, and Robb was forced to give ground to the powerful blows. Sir Garland was a skilled fighter who used height and reach exceptionally well. Robb had never met Barristan the Bold, but as a combination of speed and strength, Garland was unmatched, except perhaps by the Kingslayer. Robb enjoyed his spars with the Tyrell Knight. He could only score 5 or 6 touches before Garland had reached 10, but there was no shame in losing. Better to take bruises in the courtyard and learn than to defeat overmatched enemies. Robb staggered backwards and his shield arm dropped as he feigned exhaustion. When Garland began an overhand strike, Robb rushed forward, defending with the blade and punching the shield squarely into the breastplate. The steel edge clipped Garland's chin, and the blade jabbed into the right shoulder of the stunned knight. In a real battle, Robb was not certain he could pierce the heavy steel pauldron, but in this spar he had won the point. "Well struck, Lord Stark." Garland wiped the sweat from his brow. "You are still ahead, sirrah, 8-4, Robb said. Garland laughed. He had an easy charm compared to the serious Willas and the prickly Loras. Over the last 2 days, Robb observed carefully the men from the Reach. They were brave men, skilled at the joust and the melee, armed with pikes, spears, and words. The lines of horses seemed endless, palfreys ridden by knights, high-spirited destriers bred for war, and plow horses driven by teamsters to pull wagons and siege engines. The largest banner was the crowned black stag on a field of gold, but the golden rose of Highgarden outshone every other sigil. A dozen fine tents with terrell colors surrounded Renly's green silk pavilion. The Reachmen easily outnumbered the Stormlanders. Bitterbridge was on the Mander River. So many of the great houses of the Reach, Tyrell, Ashford, Merryweather, and Fossaway, could easily travel on the Rose Road. Robb was surprised that, besides the green sea turtle of Lord Estermont, the most prominent banners supporting Renly were sworn houses to Highgarden. Further, there were many unknown shields, small lords, or hedge knights, who rushed to pledge their fealty to the new king. Renly had secured a great army through marriage and pomp, but a host so quickly gathered could also scatter to the winds. Robb picked up his sword to continue when an excitable Olyvar Frey burst into the yard, startling several other men-at-arms. "Lord Stark, a raven has come for you," Olyvar said. "Then give it to me." Robb placed his shield down and reached out his hand. "My lord, the Queen of Thorns, Lady Olenna, has taken it. She sent her guardsmen to inform us." "Twin giants they were, taller than the Great Jon," his squire said. Robb arched his eyebrows, and Garland gave a sheepish look. "Very well. Lead me to her," he said to his anxious squire. Robb walked silently to the castle, ignoring the curious eyes of Tyrrell. Lady Olenna and her cronies had taken over the cloister garth near the septet. It was puny compared to the paths and trails of Highgarden, but the green court held a kitchen garden, a terrace for herbs, and wooden trellises for fruit trees. The sweet smell of rosemary, peppermint, and fenugreek mixed with the earthy scents of leeks, cabbages, and parsnips. Robb passed Olenna's formidable guards, Aric and Eric, and a jester singing the Bear and the Maiden Fair, while he bounced a ball off his fat buttocks to the amusement of Marguerite and her ladies. Robb cleared his throat loudly, attracting the attention of Olenna Tyrell. Margu stopped laughing and turned her big brown eyes to him. Her shy, sweet smile was almost convincing. Gorsling greeted his wife, the dainty and always pleasant Lyanna Fossaway. The young girls hushed, but an older dark-haired woman with exotic Isazi features gazed boldly at Robb. "Lord Stark, why do you glower? Is this a northern custom?" Olenna asked. "My lady, you know the reason. You have a raven for me," Robb said. "Ah yes, the raven," the old woman replied. "Tell them what you saw, Meister." An old man with white hair and a stooped back came over, holding a squawking raven in an iron cage. There were streaks of reddish-brown on the bird's black feathers. "Lady Tyrell, the raven arrived this morning with blood on its claws," the master squeaked. "So, perhaps it attacked another bird or defended itself," Robb said. "No, my lord, the blood was from the letter, and it must have been fresh to drip like so on claws and feathers." The old man said to the gasps of many ladies, "A message written in blood is not the norm. Such a letter attracts curiosity." Olenna said, pointing to the piece of parchment, sealed with a wax dire wolf. "The Reach would be curious of any message from Riverrun, whether it was written in ink or blood." Robb took the note, broke the seal, and read it silently. He kept his face still as the tension grew in the room. Finally, before the Queen of Thorn could snap, he acceded to their interest. "It is from my brother, Jon. He has won a battle and cracked the tooth." "A tooth? Did he lose it in fighting?" the sultry dark-haired woman asked in a breathy voice. "The golden tooth. Jon has taken the seat of House Lefford and captured many prisoners." Robb left the terse note on the table for Lady Olenna and Marguerite to read. "How did he take the tooth?" Sarah Garland asked. "That is a hard, strong keep, and commands the hill road. He could not have besieged the castle in a few days." "I do not know, Sarah. The letter is short." Robb shrugged. "Will you need paper and a quill to write back to your brother?" Marguerite asked. "Why should I? He is busy at war, while I just wait." Robb said pointedly. He walked out to find his men, leaving the Tyrells to their plots and schemes. The next morning, Renly Baratheon was ready to ride. After a sumptuous breakfast, the king came out in his suit of forest green plate mail, chased with gold fluting, polished to a mirror shine. Renly wore a solid helm, crowned with a great rack of golden antlers, whose tips added an extra foot and a half to the top. Robb was no master, but even he knew that in battle the force of a blow to the useless antlers would be transmitted to the head. Such a shock from a mace or a hammer could easily be fatal. Flanked by his knights in rainbow cloaks, Renly waved to the masses. The visor opened so the crowd could see his easy smile. Behind Renly followed the chivalry of the Reach and the Stormlands. Lors Tyrell as Lord Commander rode first, but the 6 other rainbow guards formed a semicircle with their multicolored silk cloaks billowing in the wind. Robb was in the next group, next to Randall, Tarley, and Jon Fossaway. The genial Fossaway Knights of Cider Hall and New Barrow were good company, but the bristly Lord of Horn Hill was not. His 2 sons attended him, one pale and very stout, and the other lean and robust. There were other great lords with their heirs and most trusted retainers, Estermont and Rowan, Caron and Hightower, Oakhart, Selmy, Crane, and Tyrell cousins and uncles. Mace and Garland, though, remained at Bitterbridge. Robb grimaced. There were far too many knights, and not enough other troops, light cavalry to skirmish, foot soldiers with pikes, archers and crossbowmen. He guessed that, like Rose Bolton and Rickard Karstark, the Tyrell men would ride with the infantry and the supply wagons. At the Twins, Robb had split his troops deliberately to surprise the Kingslayer and break the siege with his cavalry, but Stannis Baratheon would certainly not be surprised, given the terms for the parley. Robb hoped that they were not walking into an ambush. Another round of cheers came from the crowd. Robb craned his neck and saw the elegant green wheelhouse, pulled by 6 heavy coursers and decorated with golden flowers. The Rose of Highgarden waved to the crowd, and the wizened Queen of Thorns joined her. At least, it was not the obscenely gigantic wheelhouse that Cersei and the royal children rode. That double-decked monstrosity, pulled by 40 horses, was too wide to pass through the Winterfell gates. A gallant Renly rode back and planted a light kiss on his wife's cheek. Then Tyrell guards helped Margaery and Lady Olenna into the carriage and closed the door. Robb tied the saddlebags, full of bread, hard cheese, dried fruit, and meat, to the pommel of his white stallion. He drank deeply and handed the empty waterskin to Olivar to refill. Grey Wind had feasted on deer last night, and the dire wolf was eager to run free. Robb heartily agreed. He had stayed at Bitterbridge for 3 long nights and was more than happy to leave. The sooner they finished with Stannis, the sooner he could return to Riverrun. The sun was still high in the sky, although, on the descent, they rode south and would reach the clear waters of the Blueburn in time for dinner before following the river an hour more to the east. The Blueburn River flowed from Longtable in the Reach to the western parts of the Stormlands. They would meet Stannis at the river's end, north of Summerhall. Robb enjoyed the lush green fields on horseback with Grey Wind at his side. This was the Reach proper, a well-populated area watered by the immense Mander and its 2 daughters, the Blueburn and the Cockleswent. He rode alone, with Lady Catelyn speaking to nobles from the Reach, and his guards exchanged tales of their feats in battle with admiring squires. He was surprised when 2 palfreys approached, with the Rose of Highgarden in the lead. "Talisa, I would speak to Lord Robb, if you could return to my grandmother," Margaery said. The dark-haired healer nodded and turned her horse back. Robb was surprised by Lady Magier's presence on this excursion. Talisa was born in Volantis. Stannis Baratheon is a red priestess of Roar, a witch and a shadowbinder. In Volantis, they worship Roar. They say the Temple of the Lord of Light in the city is several times larger than the Sept of Baelor. Margaery explained, "And you think she can help us against this woman?" Robb asked. Margaery shrugged. "It can't hurt. We know nothing about this red god. This woman has burnt statues of the 7 on Dragonstone and claims to have seen visions in the flames for Stannis. Is it mummery, or is there something more? I had hoped Lady Talisa might tell us." "That is thoughtful, Your Grace. It is something my brother Jon would do," Robb said. "Lord Stark, tell me, what more do you know of the Golden Tooth?" Margaery asked, batting her lovely eyes. Robb snorted at her brazen effort. In her own way, Margaery was as brassy as Lady Olenna. Last night, news of the capture of the Golden Tooth spread. Redsley's bannermen tried to ask Catelyn and Honor Guard questions, 6 ways, but they could give no greater insights. Rangiel Tarley's face had turned an angry red when his mother professed to know nothing of the war efforts. "You have seen everything I have," he replied before relenting. "Your Grace, Jon sent that one raven. I can only guess at how he cracked the tooth." "Surely you know more. You gave your brother command of the army. He must be following your orders," Margaery insisted. Robb shook his head. "I did not give Jon orders. We discussed possibilities, targets, and potential outcomes. How far should the troops march into the Westerlands? What castles to attack? Jon's counsel does not always agree with mine, and on the field he is his own man. He must be, when things change in battle, so must the general's orders. You trust your half-brother much, my lord. Marjorie said, He is my blood. I am Lord of Winterfell. Your grace. I trust Jon to lead my men, and as for how he took the tooth, my guess would be with a clever trick. Attacking with speed and surprise is the best way to victory, Robb said. Marjorie cocked her head to the side. You must think us silly and slow. Renly took 3 days to ride for the Stormlands, and my father, Mates, is known more for feasts, not speed. My grandmother has heard what Lady Catelyn said, that we are the knights of the summer and winter is coming. Tell me, my lord, do you think Renly's army will wither away? Robb thought his mother should not say such things to the lords of the Reach. I have sparred with several of your men, your brother Garlan, but also the Fossaways, Bryce Caron, Rhubarb Royce, and the Purple Knight. They were skilled with the sword, but good fighters do not always make a good army. Marjorie reacted with surprise. What do you mean? Men train for years to fight with lance and sword, and that may win jousts and melees, but a battle is not won by single combat. A good army has discipline, speed, supplies, and a mix of troops. In songs, the knights charge gallantly ahead to victory. The Kingslayer did that at the Whispering Wood, and we slaughtered his men. No army wins with one troop type alone, unless they face idiots, Robb said. But Renly only took the knights. The archers and infantry will take a week to follow. Lady Marjorie stammered. In good weather and on the open field, Renly's knights would win. But if you gave my brother a week to prepare with cavalry, archers, and pikes, Jon would bleed you badly, Robb said. We will have reinforcements. Even with the knights alone, we outnumber Stannis. And Garland will bring 25,000 more men. Our forces will overwhelm them, she said. I do not understand that. Stannis is said to be a good battle commander. My father says that he won the war against the Greyjoys, defeating the Iron Fleet. The Ironborn are not easy to beat at sea. Why should Stannis offer battle if he had no hope of victory? He is no dreamer, boasting of victories. He has been blooded in war, unlike your men. Renly says that our swords and lances are so great that with a single charge he will break the enemy host. Marjorie said she sounded more hopeful than certain. Anyone can boast, and all armies can lose. Bad terrain, poor weather, surprise attack. Your bannermen see war as a tourney to win glory. That is why they are summer knights. War is not a song. Stannis will not an easy opponent, Robb said. Do you know what he may do? Marjorie asked, worried. I do not. I have never met Stannis, nor stepped foot on the Stormlands. I do not know what forces he commands, but I know this. An army of sheep led by a stag is better than an army of stags led by a sheep. Stannis is not a sheep. He will fight to the end. In 2 days, they reached the terminus of the Blue Burn. With the march guided by Lord Tarley, Renly had only stopped at one castle, Grassfield Keep, and that had only been a quick lunch without singers, jugglers, or jesters. Hedge knights, sellswords, and camp followers swelled their ranks along the way. But that did not slow down the pace. Even the wheelhouse kept up, with fresh horses provided by House Meadows of Grassy Vale. Robb had not seen Renly for much of the trip. The king spent much of his time in the wheelhouse or with Lords Tyrell. He had encountered Marjorie and Talisa on their palfreys, escorted by Sir Aemon Cui, or Sir Guyard Morrigan of the Rainbow Guard, and spoken to the Fossaway men and Mathis Rowan. Their company was preferable to the dour and suspicious Turley. He was a hard taskmaster and made everyone uncomfortable, including both of his sons. Even Lady Olenna shied from provoking the Lord of Hornhill. That night, they camped on a windswept plain with yellow grass as far as the eye could see. Rosier had summoned the bannerman to his green and gold pavilion and had requested the presence of House Stark as well. Lady Catelyn was concerned about the meeting. "Robb, will you fight in the battle?" she asked, worried. His guards had stepped outside to give them privacy. "Mother, tomorrow will be a parley. If the stags have sense, there won't be fighting," Robb said. "The Baratheons are known for their temper, and Renly may want you to fight for him." "Kings do not forget such things," Catelyn said. Robb strapped the Valyrian steel dagger to his belt. He expected no trouble, but better to be prepared. Any man can crown himself. Renly is not king yet, and I have not bent the knee. If we are attacked, we will fight back. But for now, the North will only observe. Perhaps we shouldn't be here, caught in the middle between two armies, Catelyn said. Robb shook his head. We must know what the Baratheons plan. If Renly triumphs and he gives us men, we can crush Tywin in the Riverlands. If the Baratheons unite, then they will hold the Iron Throne, and Joffrey will lose his head, and if Stannis wins, I would take the measure of the man. We can bend the knee if Stannis destroys the Lannisters, Robb said. You are consumed by revenge. Wars need not be fought until the last drop of blood. I have lost my lord husband. I do not want to bury a son, she cried. Mother, this is not for my revenge. I fight for our family. The throne beheaded the Lord of Winterfell. My ancestors have marched to war for much less. The kings of winter would only kneel to a dragon, not a lion or a stag, Robb said. Those times are past. Bend a knee to save your life, if you must. If not for yourself, then think of Bran and Rickon. So they grow with a brother, Catelyn said. I do not want to die. But if death comes, let me die for House Stark. Father would do the same, and if I die, Jon will avenge me. He will not rest until my killers are dead, Robb said. But your brothers and sisters, what about them? Catelyn said. Jon will protect them, who will fight for House Stark. Even if Bran could still walk, he is a boy of 9. Sansa is trapped in King's Landing. Arya is lost, and Rickon has 4 name days. If I die, the Lannisters will try to kill my brothers and use my sisters to control Winterfell. You know that, Mother. Jon would defend them. He would be their best hope. With those last words, Robb left his tent, with a somber Catelyn and his men trailing behind. The green pavilion was larger, far more spacious than the command tent that Robb had used on the march down from Winterfell. There were comforts that would have looked at home in a castle boudoir, a feather mattress with satin pillows, a wood and copper tub, and bottles of arbor and Dornish wine with a crystal glass decanter and a complete set of silver cups. Squires had set out a silver bowl of ripe peaches, plums, and pears. Robb was more drawn to the yew longbow set next to the king's armor. A full quiver of arrows rested on a nearby hook, a few broad arrowheads for hunting, but most with short bodkin points, better to punch holes through mail armor. The Lords of the Stormlands were justly famous for the skill of their bowmen, sharpened by centuries of beating back Dornish invaders. Many houses clustered around the Red Mountains that separated Dorne, the Reach, and the Stormlands. The Torleys, the Dondarrions, and the Danes pledged loyalty to different lieges, but they were all strong allies in war. Robb wondered if Renly had any skill with the bow. Our scouts have sent a message back from Storm's End. Stannis has a force of 5,000, and only a few bannermen. House Celtigar, Sunglass, Bar Emmon, and Valeron. He has less than 500 horse, and many of those free riders in boiled leather. They are not well supplied, but their ships have blockaded Shipbreaker Bay, Mattis Rowan reported. Our armored lances will sweep away their cavalry with our first charge. Let me lead the knights for you, your grace. I will show them the fate of traitors, Loras declared. The commander of the Rainbow Guard was too eager to see the slight hesitation on Renly's face. We met here to parley. Stannis is your brother. Should you not speak to him first before considering battle? Robb said. Rangio Tarley sneered. We have an army. He has an army. We should crush Stannis now when he is weak. Are you afraid of battle, Stark? I've won plenty of battles, Tarley. Robb turned again to Renly. Your grace, do you wish to be the king of the High Garden or to rule over the 7 kingdoms? Rudyr looked surprised. The second, of course. Then the day will come when House Celtigar, Valeron, and men near Dragonstone will pledge their banners to you and Queen Margaery. Why fight now, if there is no need? I am no maester, but the Targaryen kings were strongest when there was a Targaryen. The founder of House Baratheon was the first hand of the king for his half-brother, Aegon the Conqueror. Why not have a Baratheon hand for a Baratheon king? Robb asked. But my father Mace was promised the position of hand. Rudyr sputtered. Quiet, Loras. Let Lord Stark speak and explain his thinking, Olenna said. There are many positions that can be awarded to the Tyrells and their bannermen. The Small Council, the City Watch, the King's Guard offer to appoint Stannis Hand of the King. Your brother has sat on the Small Council for many years. He knows the power of the hand, Robb said. That will not satisfy Stannis. He wants the throne for himself and his heirs, Rowan said. He is only a daughter of 10. Shireen cannot inherit. If he has no more children, then you would be the heir to the throne anyway. And if he should have another son, you can promise a betrothal with your children. You can bind your families together in marriage. If you made peace, House Baratheon would rule for centuries, like the Targaryens, Robb argued. Renly smiled sadly. You have never met my brother, Lord Stark. He is hard and stubborn, and does not forgive slights. He still believes he was cheated out of Storm's End. Stannis was cheated, Robb thought. The older brother should inherited their family home. Then give him Storm's End. No man is as accursed as a kinslayer. You may not wield the sword that kills him, but it would be your men following your orders. He is your brother. What would the gods say if he died at your hand? I will treat with him, but my brothers and I have never been close. Robert was too busy whoring and Stannis grinding his teeth. But if this does not work, we will battle, Renly said. They rode to an unnamed field, the grass yellow and orange from Summer's End. There was a high ridge over the plain that could be reached only by a stony path. Robb wore armor, sword, and dagger, but no helmet. His shield was strapped to the back of his white courser, and Grey Wind cantered at his side. Sir Loras and Queen Margaery rode at the sides of Renly, while Robb formed the third line. Lady Catelyn, Lords Tarley, Rowan, and Fossaway. The Rainbow Guard followed closely behind with Lady Taliso. In the distance, Robb could see them approaching. Stannis rode in front with two figures at his sides, a pale woman with the hair of burnished copper, all dressed in red, and a man with a weathered face in plain brown and gray. Heavily armored men carried the banner of a black stag enclosed in a red heart wreathed in orange flames. Robb took a closer look at Stannis. He was a large man, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark blue eyes. His black hair was thin, and he had a close-cropped beard on his square jaw. There was a harshness about him that betrayed a lack of mercy in thin, pale lips and hollow cheeks. This was not a man who enjoyed mummers or jugglers. Unlike Renly, who wore polished green plate mail and the crown of golden antlers, Stannis dressed plainly in a gray wool tunic over boiled leather, black breeches, and a plain black belt with sword and dagger. He had no need of a crown to appear a king. There was no love lost between the two brothers. After brief greetings, the two brothers introduced their companions. Stannis snorted at the Tyrells and was distinctly unimpressed with Renly's marriage. In return, Renly jabbed about the reasons behind Stannis' newfound religion and the buxom Red Priestess. Melisandre declared that Stannis was Azor Ahai, reborn, amidst salt and smoke under a bleeding star. She did not respond to Renly's joke about hams. Stannis turned to Robb. I am surprised to see you here, Lord Stark. Your father supported my claim. His integrity cost him his head when he declared Joffrey illegitimate. Did you know that the royal children were bastards? Robb asked. I suspected that along with Jon Arryn, Stannis said. Then why did you not tell your brothers? Had you informed Robert, Cersei Lannister and her brother would have lost their heads, and Joffrey would be exiled. Robb said. He would not have believed me, Stannis said. He would have believed you and Jon Arryn. Or if you had told my father directly, he would have believed you and Ned Stark. Instead, you disappeared to Dragonstone. Jon Arryn has been dead a full year. The kingdoms burn because you stayed silent, Robb said. What is done. I am the rightful king now. The Iron Throne is mine by right. All those who deny that are rebels and usurpers, Stannis said bluntly. Everyone denies you, Dorne, the Reach, the Westerlands, and the North. Who proclaims you king, the Lord of Light? He has no swords or spears. You have only a few thousand men. I have the might of the Reach and the Stormlands. Acknowledge me as the heir, and I will make you my hand, Renly said. You should not jest about Reborn. He will save the world from darkness through his chosen one, Melisandre said. I am the older. It is my duty to rule. What have you done to deserve the Iron Throne? Sit in meetings of the small council and make japes, ride on a horse at tourneys, and be beaten by better men. These qualify you to be a jester or a hedge knight, not a king, Stannis said. Before Renly could utter an ugly retort, Robb spoke up. Lord Baratheon, if you became Hand, you would rule. Your brother, Robert, and the Mad King may have worn crowns, but it was Jon Arryn and Tywin Lannister who ruled. The realms were prosperous and at peace then. Why not serve as your brother's hand? You would command armies, dispense justice, and draft laws. The Seven Kingdoms need a strong hand. Why could it not be you? Stannis ground his teeth. It is my right, it belongs to my family. Your family is Baratheon, and there would be a Baratheon king. Joffrey claims to be half stag, but he is all lion. If you fight your brother, the Lannisters may win, or even the Dornish. If you join together, House Baratheon will be victorious. The North will bend the knee when my Lord Father receives justice, Robb said. King Stannis will defeat his enemies. The Lord of Light favors him, Melisandre said fervently. And what of Shireen, Stannis said. Your brother can promise a marriage to a great lord, and if you should have a son in the future and Queen Margaery has a daughter, perhaps they can wed. Robb said. Stannis scowled as he looked at his brother and Margaery. Robb could not tell whether he was merely scornful or seriously considering the offer. Stannis was a proud and hard man, but the hand of the king was the second most powerful man in the Seven Kingdoms. Robb doubted that Renly, who was so fond of mummers and banquets, would be an attentive king. Stannis had attended the small council since the rebellion. For a moment, there appeared to be a chance, however small, that stubborn Stannis might be swayed. Then Renly opened his mouth. Renly's hand slid inside his cloak, and Stannis immediately reached for his sword. Smiling, Renly offered a golden peach in his right hand. Would you like one, brother? You've never tasted anything so sweet. He took a large bite, and juice ran down the corner of his mouth. I did not come here to eat. Stannis fumed. Robb did not understand what was happening. Neither did his lady mother, the Tyrells, or Renly's great lords. They had been negotiating before Renly took out the piece of fruit. A man should never refuse to taste a peach. He may never get the chance again. Life is short, Stannis. And as the Starks say, winter is coming. Renly said, throwing away the fruit. Robb noticed that most of the peach had been wasted. Are you threatening me? Stannis demanded. I have fought battles before you, could even hold a sword. His rage was plain to see. Yes, I remember. The siege at Storm's End, where we had to eat horses, dogs, cats, and rats. You performed so well during that battle, Renly japes. There was something ugly there. Unsaid, but full of tension. Stannis and Renly Baratheon had suffered for an entire year at Storm's End. Besieged by the Tyrells who feasted outside the castle, had Mace Tyrell went to the Riverlands and reinforced Rhaegar. Robert would have lost the war. Instead, the small garrison at Storm's End suffered greatly for Robert's glory, and Stannis commanded that garrison. Robb realized that Stannis had only been his age, 16 named days during the siege, while Renly was little older than Rickon. He wondered what scars that battle inflicted on both Baratheon brothers. Enough, Stannis stormed. This mummery has gone too far. I am the rightful heir to the Iron Throne. For the sake of our mother who bore us, I will give you one night to consider. Bend the knee, and you will keep Storm's End and a place in my council. Else I will destroy you when the sun rises tomorrow. He turned his horse and rode off. The man in brown and gray said nothing, but the Red Priestess looked to Renly and smiled. The night is dark and full of terrors. Look to your sins, Lord Renly. Stannis and his followers left, leaving them with that cryptic comment. Prepare to fight, my lords, Renly said, smiling. The young king jested with his rainbow guard, and Ser Loras once again asked to lead the charge. What do you think of the Red Woman? Margaery asked Talisa. The healer rode next to them, as the order of the march broke down. Your Grace, she frightens me. She wore a ruby on the red gold choker at the neck. Only Shadowbinders wear such a thing, and they use it to conjure evil magics. Talisa said, Magics? Perhaps she will teach Stannis how to laugh or perform in bed. Rosier Lejet. My lady, what is a Shadowbinder? Robb asked. I do not know, sire, but Shadowbinders are said to cast the most sinister spells, even darker than the warlocks of Korth. With dark sorcery, they can bind shadows to do their will. There is a ruined city in Essos called Stegai, full of the walking dead. The Shadowbinders go there to consort with demons or worse, Talisa said. What a bunch of bollocks. You can listen to these prophecies and tales of witchcraft. But the swords of the Reach will destroy Stannis. Her magic is a sham, Tally ranted. Lord Tarley was decidedly unpleasant, and Margaery's face showed great annoyance, before she hid behind her bland and charming mask. She was a skilled mummer, Robb thought. His horse skittered, avoiding something in the grass. Robb looked down at a sharp arrow point. It was old and rusted, but the point was still sharp. Curious, Robb dismounted and looked around. There were many arrowheads here, buried under the tall grass. Robb, what is the matter? Lady Catelyn said. 2 knights of the Rainbow Guard paused, wondering if there was any danger. I found arrows, a great deal of them. There is something odd here. Robb looked at the high ridge, and suddenly he understood. I know this place. But Lord Stark, you said you have never been to the Stormlands. A puzzled Margaery said. By now Renly and the other lords had stopped their horses. My brother, Jon Snow, has told me of this place. Robb's hands opened out. We will not be the first army to charge over this field. 100 years ago, this grass turned blood red with the deaths of 10,000 men. This is Redgrass Field, where Daemon Blackfyre fought the combined Targaryen forces. He would have won but for that. Robb pointed upwards to the stony high ground far above them. That is the Weeping Ridge. The Black Dragon was winning until Bloodraven and the Raven's teeth reached the top. From there, they rained volleys of arrows down, killing Daemon's sons and the Black Dragon himself. Your brother told you of this? Asked the surprised Renly. Jon and I have spent much time discussing war. He has a good head for battle. Stannis chose the meeting ground. He must be planning for his men to take the ridge, so they can shoot your knights when they charge. You should post archers there, Robb said. Lord Roshan looked sourly at Tarley. We have no archers, Lord Stark, only knights, Rowan said. What does that matter? Our armor is the highest quality the Reach has to offer. Arrows cannot penetrate plate mail. Lors boasted. The Black Dragon wore the best steel, as did his sons, Aegon and Aemon. Bloodraven killed all 3. A volley of arrows is different from a single archer, and the ridge is high up. The arrows will come down with great speed, enough to find weaknesses in your armor or helmet. The arrows could strike your horses, and then your charge would fail. Rosied. Jon Fossaway shed his genial manner and took charge. This was clever, of Stannis. I will send my knights to secure the ridge. They may not have bows, but they can prevent anyone else from shooting. And if the battle goes on for days, archers from the Reach will join us. Robb nodded. The Weeping Ridge required a long, hard climb over stony mountainous ground. It was difficult to reach, and not a natural place to put troops. He wondered what other tricks Stannis had in store. That night, Renly asked to speak with Robb alone. Ludivar Frey and Lucas Blackwood stood outside, chatting with Brienne, Emin-Cor, and Red Rovice. Renly had washed and bathed just recently. A silver goblet was balanced precariously on the edge of the copper and wood tub, and the scent of lavender and dried herbs filled the air. The would-be king wore a dark green velvet doublet with golden stags, and sat in a high-slung leather camp chair. He offered the other to Robb. Lord Stark, I want to thank you for your insights this morning. Fossaway and Estermont men have secured the Weeping Ridge. Any archers in Stannis' forces will not gain the high ground. I am indebted to you. I would not want my knights to be ambushed from above, Renly said. There were no hints of smiles or laughter in his voice. I am glad, Your Grace. But are you certain you must fight your brother? Robb asked. Rosier put down the glass decanter and sat back in the chair. He looked older in the light of the candles that dripped wax on the black-feathered quill. I loved Stannis once, a long time ago, but the older I became, the more his flaws were clear. When the war was over, Robert made me Lord of Storm's End. I was a boy of 7, but even then, I could feel Stannis' disdain. He believed he deserved our family home. Perhaps so, but why be angry at me? I had no part in the decision. He has never forgiven me for that. When I smile, Stannis thinks I mock him. When I joke, I am a fool. When I enjoy living, I am a frivolous twit. Since I took his castle, I could do nothing right in his eyes, Rosier said. But you did take his castle, Robb thought. Storm's End belonged to Stannis as the heir to House Baratheon. The Targaryen kings gave Dragonstone as a seat for the crown prince, but Stannis would never have inherited the throne. Cersei and Tywin Lannister would not have allowed that. I am sorry for your troubles, but kings have disliked their hands before. Rosierli turned keen, shrewd eyes on Robb. Stannis would make a terrible hand. Oh yes, he is clever and tough, but a hand needs allies. A hand needs to win friends and influence people. Stannis will tell you to do something because it is your duty. Fat lot of good that will do with Tywin Lannister, or even the Tyrells. I am sorry that it has come to this. I would never wish to face my brother in battle. You are Starks. Wolves band together like packs. It is not the same with the Baratheons. Stags are solitary beasts who rut and fight. Robert was much like that. He rutted in all 7 kingdoms, he called it, making the 8. Renly said with a slight grimace before turning his full attention to Robb. Lord Stark, will you fight with me in this battle? I have only 6 men. I doubt that would make a difference in the battle, Robb said dryly. It is not only your sword, you are a good leader of men. Had you not pointed out the high ridge, my knights would have been ambushed. Lord Rowan and Lord Fossaway have not known you for long, but already they admire your military acumen. That is because they dislike Randyll Tarley. Robb thought, Your Grace, the North has not declared for anyone in the war. We seek justice for my father's death. My lord, who will most likely to grant that to you? There are 3 contenders for the crown. Joffrey the Ill-Born, and whoever Tywin supports, Stannis, without support from anyone, and myself, with both the Reach and the Stormlands behind me. Stannis consorts with a Red Priestess who burns statues of the 7. The Faith will not accept that. What if she destroys Godswoods for this Lord of Light? Stannis would tear the 7 kingdoms apart. I am best suited for the Iron Throne. I am no drunk like Robert, nor a bitter zealot like Stannis. I would care for small folk and highborn alike. I would be a good friend to the North. Renly said. Robb was about to respond when a sudden gust of wind flung open the door of the tent. He heard Grey Winds howl and then saw the shadows on the silk walls move. The candles guttered out and he felt a strange chill. The shadow was black on the green silk, and it raised a sword. Robb barked a word of warning and drew his sword out to parry that strange, insubstantial, and yet deadly blade as it sliced down at Renly's neck. There was no sound when the swords met. Instead, Robb shivered as pain lanced through his arm. Renly had dived to the floor, his face a mask of horror. Grey Wind burst through the door, rushing to his master's side. Gods! Robb screamed. The shadow had turned to him, and he could see in the head the features of a Baratheon, large eyes, a heavy brow, a strong jutting chin. But the shadow was not Renly's, but Stannis, with a hollow skull-like face, and a fringe of hair that went from the temples to the chin. Brienne, Ser Robar, and Saruman charged through the door. The shadow raised both arms, towering over Renly. Again, Robb stepped forward to block the blade. The swords met, and Robb staggered from the blow, dropping to his knees. Shadow Stannis advanced again toward Renly, ready to thrust the nightmare blade down at the would-be king. Robb leaped up and plunged his steel sword through the umbral form. The face, shrouded in black and red, turned and with a sneer backhanded Robb into the table, and the decanter shattered on the floor, spilling arbor gold on the grass. Grey Wind growled and lunged for the shadow. The dire wolf's powerful jaws closed on the shadow's body, but just like the steel sword of his master, there was no effect. The teeth closed without harm to the eldritch creation. For the king, shouted the 3 knights of the Rainbow Guard. Eamon threw himself over Renly's body. Robar brought his 2-handed blade down on the shadow blade in an attempt to disarm. The Shade's weapon was forced down into the ground, short of Renly, but then the ghost of Stannis merely dropped the blade, and it vanished into thin air. The shadow walked forward, smashed Ser Aemon to the side like a fly, and then wrapped 2 large ghostly hands around Renly's throat. Brienne grabbed a candle. There are only a few left in the pavilion that had not guttered out. She thrust boldly at the monster, and the wax hissed as it touched the sorceress form. The shadow swung about, one huge hand still choking Renly, and ghastly black eyes on Brienne and Robar. The right arm of the Shade clenched, and a dark axe appeared, summoned out of the depths of hell. Robb stood up. Lucas Blackwood and Olyvar Frey were at his side, trying to drag him away from the fiendish threat. Robb resisted, refusing to abandon Renly to a brutal and vile death. The spectral likeness of Stannis, a blasphemy to the old gods and the Seven, filled him with loathing. Robb grabbed at the dagger at his belt, his hand on the dragonbone hilt. Nothing was deeper and sharper than Valyrian steel forged with magic from long ago. Robb rushed forward and plunged the dagger into the Shadow's left arm. The ghost of Stannis screamed in pain, dropping an ashen Renly to the ground. The axe, blood red over black, swiped down, hurtling toward Robb's head. He managed to throw himself aside, and the enchanted axe only landed a glancing blow on his right shoulder. He was numb, ice spreading through his arm and chest. Something was very wrong. The room turned dark and cold, colder than any winter storm in the Wolfswood. Voices called for him, and a distraught wolf howled. There was shouting, but Robb could not hear. Throngs of people, knights, ladies, men-at-arms, lords, surged into the room, babbling and yelling and getting into each other's way. Everything turned blurry and hazy. He tried to speak, or move, or do anything, but his legs stumbled and collapsed. A stooped figure and other women stood over him with candles. There were cries of shock as the light revealed a pallid and wan Renly, but Robb knew no more. The Lord of Winterfell succumbed to the cold and dark and entered a dark, dreamless slumber. He woke up, his mouth dry and his eyes blinking, as the light filtered into the tent. He was on some sort of bed, clearly not his simple sleep sack, and he could feel shaggy smoke, gray fur, and the smell of the dire wolf. Grey Wind's head peeked up, and those hard yellow eyes looked at it before a long and wet tongue licked him in the face. Rose's amused grunt attracted immediate attention. "Oh, good, you are finally awake." There was a smile on the long and pretty face of Talisa Megan. She was a full white apron over her simple gray dress, and she handed him a cup of cold water. Robb had tasted anything so refreshing. His mind began to reconstruct the events of the last hours. Speaking to Renly, the Black Shadow, with the face of Stannis, the bitter cold. Robb sat up abruptly and groaned when his arm and shoulder throbbed. "Wait, what happened to the battle?" he said. The tent flaps opened, and Patrick Mallister rushed in. "Lord Stark, you are awake. Thank the Seven. I will send someone to tell Lady Catelyn immediately," the man said. "Hold! Ser Patrick, who won the battle between Stannis and Renly." "Battle, my lord?" "There was no battle, but the Tyrells have put Olyvar Frey and Sir Lucas to trial. Lady Stark would be at your side, but she is speaking for them." Patrick said. "What?" Robb swung his legs over to the side. His feet felt sluggish and his head throbbed. He stood up shakily, and Patrick rushed to support his injured right side. "Lord Stark, you should not stand. You are still hurt," Talisa said. "Lady Talisa, my men are in danger." "Cerys Patrick, bring me there," Robb said. He shuffled slowly out of the tent, with the dire wolf leading the way. As he walked out, Robb and Flint joined the small group. The other guards, Sir Donal and Owen, were at his mother's side. Robb gritted his teeth and walked as quickly as possible, but his legs felt like jelly. Grey Wind snarled, and the soldiers backed away before pointing and whispering. Paprec and Robin led him to a large clearing. On an elevated platform, 5 figures in plain tunics were forced to kneel, hands bound behind their backs. Even at this distance, Robb could see the bruised faces of Olyvar, Lucas, and the 3 Rainbow Guard members. The Tyrells sat on elegant golden heart chairs decorated with roses. Queen Marjorie and Lady Olenna flanked a fat Mace Tyrell. Pacing back and forth was an agitated and shouting Loras. Robb forced himself to speed up, ignoring stiff hips and aching legs. Many more people began to realize his presence as Grey Wind nosed forward. On the dais, Marjorie saw him first, and then a hush fell over the crowd, when the dire wolf burst forth to the shock of both Catelyn Stark and Loras Tyrell. The prisoners raised their heads, and the rest of Robb's guard surrounded their wounded lord, wary of any confrontation. "What in the 7 hells is going on here?" Robb shouted. The eyes of the entire crowd, Tyrell, Fossaway, Tarley, Rowan, and a dozen other great lords, were on him. "Lord Stark, you have woken," Sir Garland said with relief. The Tyrell knight stepped forward and motioned for the 3 free members of the Rainbow Guard to stand down. "Why are my men being tried?" Robb asked. Garland exchanged a look with an embarrassed Loras. Ser Loras said they had failed in protecting their king. He accused your guardsmen of lying and cowardice, Garland said. Did you even ask them what happened in the tent? Rose, they lied about a shadow attacking Renly with a sword and an axe, and that it strangled Renly with its bare hands. Loras cried. Robb looked at the faces of the prisoners. The fresh bruises made it clear they had been beaten recently. He turned back to the Tyrells with scorn in his voice. We were attacked by foul magic. A shadow tried to kill Renly. Brienne and these 4 men risked their lives. Sir Aemon threw his body in front of the king. Brienne and Surabrar fought bravely after the shadow knocked me down. I am certain my men in the 3 Rainbow Guards told the same story. Robb said. But, Loras said. What proof do you have of this, Lord Stark? Mace Tyrell asked pompously. Be quiet, Lady Olenna's sharp voice cut through the chatter. Lord Stark, what exactly happened? Richley and I were speaking. The door of the tent blew open, and the candles began to go out. The shadow moved along the walls, and then drew a sword. I blocked it with my blade, but the blow knocked me back. Then I saw the face. It was Stannis Baratheon, some horrible specter conjured by that red priestess out of hell. We tried to fight, but it barely noticed our attacks. Nothing could stop the shadow from wrapping its hands around Renly's neck. Finally, I stabbed the shade, and it released him. But the knights failed to defend the king, Loras said. You, sir, are a dolt, Robb hissed. None of our swords did anything. I put 6 inches of steel through the shadow, and it had no effect. Grey Wind could not hurt it. Sir Robert disarmed the creature, and it summoned a shadow axe. He pointed to the prisoners on the platform. They fought bravely. You dishonor yourself, and not them by your actions. If it was invulnerable to weapons, how did you defeat the shadow? Olenna asked. Our swords were useless, but Valyrian steel was not. I plunged the Valyrian steel dagger into the creature's left arm. The shadow screamed, dropped Renly, and melted away. The axe hit me, and I remember little after that, Robb said. The crowd had gone silent as they digested the astonishing story. When he finished, the whispers began, and Robb heard the words, Young Wolf and Bloody Stark, said by many lords. Garland, release the prisoners. Olenna said. The Tyrell knight nodded to his grandmother, ignored his father and younger brother, and untied Brienne and the others. Mathis Rowan stepped forward. This may explain why Stannis' forces withdrew. Our spies say on the same night King Renly was attacked. Stannis was injured badly on his left arm. Stannis was outnumbered. He might have retreated due to fear of our forces, Lord Taxley said. That would not explain why he has not been seen by his men. The deserters say since that night, only the Red Priestess gives orders in the camp, Rosier retorted. This Red Priestess may be responsible for more. A raven arrived today from Felwood saying that they believe Courtenay Penrose was murdered and thrown off the drum tower of Storm's End. Perhaps this witch did the same trick. John Fossaway said, a tall older man with silver hair stroked an elegant silver beard. He had large ears and looked very much like his house sigil, a red gold fox with a prominent snout. If this be magic, then there is little chance that it can be resisted. If Renly dies, then Stannis is his heir. We must consider what happens then. Garland prevented a distraught Ser Loras from drawing his blade. Lord Florent, my husband, your king, has not died. Queen Margaret said coldly. But he is not awoken, my lady. The maesters do not know if he will ever wake, Florent said. The crowd became restless and uneasy. Robb was shocked at the lack of feeling in this crowd. Only Loras and the Rainbow Guard seemed eager to avenge their king. The others were busy planning their futures. My lords, you cannot possibly think of following Stannis, Robb cried. Worsley has no heir of his blood. If Sir Pedros is dead, the garrison may surrender. Elwood Meadows is a green boy of 20. He has not the courage to hold the castle, Florut said. Stannis sent a shadow assassin to kill his brother. He is a would-be kinslayer who dabbles in foul sorcery. Do you think his Red Witch will stop at these deaths? What other atrocities will she commit in her Red God's name? Robb said, Lord Stark, at the Red Temple of Volantis, the High Priest burns people to death as a sacrifice. They say only death can pay for life. Talisa said, if you would follow such a man, then you deserve your fate. Old gods or new, nothing is more cursed than a kinslayer, Robb said, walking away. Robb was famished and thirsty. Garland had offered the use of his pavilion, and Tyrell servants ran about, with heaping platters of food. Robb guzzled an entire jug of water and gobbled down slices of hearty bread with bits of cheese. He would have eaten the entire loaf and the joint of beef on the table, but his head still throbbed. A grateful Oliver and Lucas ate as well, and Robb hacked off a large hunk of meat to throw to Grey Wind. Lady Stark thanked Talisa profusely. The 4 guards stayed inside the tent, vigilant with swords in their hands. 2 men and a very tall woman in armor approached, carrying their helmets and with swords strapped to their sides. Saruman Cole wore yellow plate with sunflowers. Brienne of Tarth wore cobalt blue dented steel, and the man in the lead wore red plate with runes. "Lord Stark, I beg an audience," Sir Robar Royce said. He was a serious man, tall and comely in a rough-hewn way. "We wish to thank you for your words." Robb waved them off as he munched on a skewer of boar, fire peppers, and peppers. "It is nothing. Anyone with sense would do the same. Common sense is not that common, at least not among the Reach. We 3 would swear loyalty to you. Even if King Renly wakes, we cannot serve under Westerlords. He has proven unworthy to be a Lord Commander of the King's Guard," Robor said. That was an understatement, but Robb was happy to welcome such formidable warriors. He did not know much of Sir Emin, but Red Robe was the second son of Jon Royce, a Valeman his lord father had known and respected. Bran was a bit odd and awkward, but standing well over 6 feet tall, she was a good fighter, as was Sir Emin Rober. Still, Robb was surprised the Rainbow Guard would abandon their king so quickly. "Why, sir, and do you think Renly will not recover?" Robb asked curiously. Before they could answer, Sir Garland had returned to his own tent. "Lord Stark, my family would speak to you." Robb stood up, buckled his dagger and sword, and followed. With the others behind him, they walked to a neighboring pavilion, all gold and green and festooned with roses. Except for Willis, the entire Tyrell family was present, and as always, well-dressed and surrounded by the trappings of wealth and power. The Lord of Highgarden sat on a splendid ebony chair in the middle of the room, but the clear locus of power was a round table with fine quills and many pieces of parchment. Olenna sat there with Margaery and a dignified silver-haired woman. Judging from her age, she was likely to be Margaery's mother, Aleri Hightower. "Lorziez had something to say," Olenna said, prodding her errant grandchild. The commander of the Rainbow Guard bowed stiffly. "Lord Stark, I was in the wrong. I beg forgiveness for my actions." Rogue pointed to Sir Robber, Saruman, and Brienne. "Sarah, you owe them an apology, not me." Lors's eyes turned stormy, but it was hard to tell whether that was anger or shame. "Now that is over, shall we eat?" "You must be hungry," Mate said jovially. "We have more important things than food now," Olenna snapped at her fat son. "My lord Sir Garland's men have already brought me bread and meat," Robb answered. "Lord Tyrell, we thank you for your hospitality," Lady Catelyn said, cheering a crestfallen Mace. "Oh, for goodness sake. We have no time to beat about. Lord Stark, we need your advice on how to best face Stannis." Olenna said, "But Taxley leads your men, and you have Lord Rowan and Fosslaway as well." Robb said, "Lord Tarley refuses to move until the king awakens. He says that we have pledged our swords, and only King Renly can give orders to the combined forces." Olenna said, "When he awakens, how long have I been asleep?" Robb asked. "Lord Stark, you have been unconscious for 7 nights," Lady Talisa said to a shocked Robb. 7 nights! That was why his lady mother had been overwhelmed at his sight, and his mouth so dry and belly so empty. His legs nearly buckled again as his mind grasped the ramifications. "But have you sent a letter to my men?" Robb asked. "We wanted to, my lord. We asked many times, but the Tyrells would not allow us any ravens." Patrick Mallister said, "You can hardly blame us. We did not know what had happened, and we did not want to spread mistruths or panic." Olenna said tartly, 7 days. "Where is Renly? Have your lord seen him?" Robb said. He realized the answer to his question even as he said the words. "You have hidden Renly away. That is why Turley does nothing, and why Florent is considering defecting to Stannis. Those dreadful Florents are always scheming," the Queen of Thorns sniffed. "His Grace is still in his tent, getting the best care possible. Several maesters are attending to him," Margaery said. Robb raised his eyebrows, and looked to Talisa. His grace is in bad shape. Worse than you were. Even giving water to drink has been a struggle, the healer admitted. He is not dead. He will wake up. He must. Loras was distraught. His sister calmly put a hand on her brother's arm for comfort. And he may, sire. The maesters have not given up hope. Maester Lomis is one of the best healers I have seen, but even Archmeister Eberros do not know how to heal magical injury. But if King Renly does waken, his mind may be clouded and his body weak, Talisa said. 7 days, that means it has been over 10 days, almost 11, since the Raven came on the Golden Tooth, Robb said. The Tyrells exchanged careful and uncertain looks. The Queen of Thorn remained impassive, but Lady Ackley and her daughter gave a small shudder, while Loras and his fat father frowned. Even the friendly Sir Garland had turned grim. The Tyrell guards placed hands on their weapons, as if preparing for an attack. Word has come to us about the Golden Tooth from many ravens. Margieri began. Lord Stark, we do not know what to believe, but the camps are abuzz with wild stories. Sir Patrick glared with disapproval at the Tyrells, and no doubt, complete lies. Lady Catelyn looked like she wanted to burst with indignation, but she kept silent. Enough hints. What has happened? What news is there of the Northmen and the Rivermen? What of my brother, Jon? Robb said. The tales of the Tooth have been disturbing. Do you know what they call Jon Snow? Lady Olenna said. They say he is the bloody wolf of the North, that he used sorcery to destroy the Lannister men at Oxcross and treachery to capture the Tooth. He hurled men to their deaths from the castle walls, cut the hands off a young Marbrand boy, starved ladies with infant children, and butchered men who surrendered. Jon is no warlock, and he is not cruel. If I captured the Tooth, they would spread lies about me as well, Robb said. I would not be so sure that these are lies. We have heard it from many different men, and something strange has happened in the Westerlands. Olenna said, the messengers say that the Westerlords have abandoned House Lannister, Ashermark, Silverhill, Hornvale, Sarsfield, Riverspring, Deep Den have gone silent. Your brother has forced those lords to back down. Garland said, but how? Robb said. The bastard says he will kill every child and prisoner at the Tooth. Catelyn said bitterly, they say he threatened to return the squires back in 3 pieces, one for each Stark the Iron Throne once held, or send their heads and hands back to their families. Others claim he will starve the prisoners to death if besieged and feed their bodies to his wolf. That is why the Westerlords have submitted to the bloody wolf, Garland said. Rubeard rolled his eyes. If they died from hunger, Ghost will not eat skin and bones. I must go north to Riverrun. Of course, Lord Stark. You must punish this Jon Snow for his crimes. Mace. Punish? My brother won a battle and subdued the Westermen. It has been 11 days since he took the Tooth. Tywin Lannister will be forced to leave Harrenhal and give us battle. I must return before the fighting is done, Robb said. So that was your plan, to lure the old lion back west? Sir Garland asked with admiration. Robb nodded. Yes, attacking Harrenhal would be foolish. My brother went west to force the hand of House Lannister. Lord Tywin is too proud to allow his lands to be threatened. I am only surprised by how quickly it has happened. Surely you do not agree with his actions. To starve and kill prisoners, Catelyn said. This is war, Mother. The Lannisters began this. They can reap the fruits of their harvest. But something must be done about Jon. Robb pointed to the stack of parchment. Lady Olenna, may I take some? The Queen of Thorns arched her eyebrows. Of course, Lord Stark. Rosier Lochok the quill and paper. If you might observe, Sir Garland, Sir Patrak, and Sir Lucas. I, Robb of House Stark, Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North, decree that my brother Jon Snow to be my heir until I have a child of my own blood. If I should be slain or injured, then Jon Snow has command of the armies of the North and the Rivermen pledged to me. Robb, you cannot do this. You will disinherit your true-born brothers and sisters and create another Blackfire rebellion. I cannot let you do this, Catelyn cried. I do not need your consent. I am Lord of House Stark. Sansa must be disinherited. If she has a Lannister child, Lord Tywin would use that to claim Winterfell. I could have died from the Shadow Assassin. And if I died, who would lead the Northmen? Robb said. What about Arya or Bran? They should be your heirs, not a bastard, Catelyn said. Bran is crippled. He cannot lead men in war, and no one has seen Arya since father died. She is likely dead. As for Bastard, look at the Baratheons. Stannis and Renly would kill each other with armies and foul magic. Trueborns are not better than bastards, Robb said bluntly. How much do you trust this Snow? After these stories of savagery and cruelty at the Golden Tooth, Olenna asked. He should never have been a Snow. Jon is a direwolf, as much a Stark as my ancestors. We share my father's blood, and he will bring fire and sword to House Lannister. My lords, fix your seals to the decree. Jon Snow is my heir. Lord Robb, what will you do now? Marjorie asked. Ride north. My brother and I have a war to fight, Robb said.